How did the ancients move stones weighing over 800 tons with such surgical precision? Modern engineers struggle to replicate the feats achieved at Baalbek or the Great Pyramids. We find drill marks in granite that suggest high-speed machinery existed millennia ago. We see astronomical alignments so perfect they defy coincidence. Is it possible that a global advanced civilization predates our recorded history? A civilization that possessed a profound understanding of physics and energy that we are only now beginning to rediscover. Today, we peel back the layers of time to examine the artifacts that mainstream archaeology cannot explain. From lost power sources to forbidden metallurgy, we are uncovering the truth. Join us as we explore the shadows of our past. The evidence is undeniable. The history books are wrong. If you ever see aerial footage of South Africa's Mpumalanga escarpment, you might notice something unsettling: hundreds, then thousands of stone circles stitched together by double-lined stone roads that run like veins across slopes and valleys. Up close, they look like scattered ruins. From above, they look like a designed system, a forgotten blueprint on the land. These are commonly called the Bakoni stone circles, but archaeologists often discuss them as part of the Bakoni stone-walled landscape. What makes them mysterious isn't one single ancient monument. It's the scale, the logic, and how long people misunderstood what they were seeing. One reason the Bakoni circles stayed underestimated for so long is simple: they don't reveal themselves at human eye level. The circles are embedded in a much larger network: homesteads, terraces, enclosures, and roads spread across the escarpment. South African History Online describes a landscape of stone circles and passages stretching from Ohrigstad to Carolina, connecting over 10,000 square kilometers into a web of stone-walled homesteads, terraced fields, and linking roads. That number matters. 10,000 square kilometers is not a ruin. It's a regional engineered footprint, closer in concept to an ancient agricultural district than a single site like Stonehenge. Many circles are interpreted as homesteads and cattle kraals, central livestock spaces surrounded by domestic areas typical of agro-pastoral settlement layouts. But the Bakoni/Bokoni pattern complicates this because circles are not isolated. They are linked by walled roads and sit inside terraced zones that look planned rather than improvised. A major synthesis paper notes that stone-walled roads often form parallel lines that funnel downslope, effectively channeling people and livestock from homesteads through the terraced landscape toward grazing areas and in larger settlements linking homesteads across the town. So here's the mystery. Why build roads in stone at all? And why build them in pairs forming corridors? Were they just fences? Traffic control, livestock management, a social statement of order. The roads suggest movement was designed, not accidental. The circles are dramatic, but the terraces are the part that quietly breaks expectations. Researchers studying Bakoni stress that this is the only pre-colonial society in South Africa known to have left clear built evidence of a complex agricultural system, with the closest comparable case being the terraced settlements of Nyanga in eastern Zimbabwe. That comparison is important. It moves Bakoni/Bokoni out of the random stone rings category and into the rare class of landscape civilizations, societies that reshaped whole slopes to farm intensively. Even more intriguing excavation-based work argues the terracing wasn't a one-time mega project. it likely developed incrementally with cultivation, stone clearing, and terrace building happening together over time. That means the landscape may record generations of upgrades like a living agricultural technology. And there's a scientific clue hidden in the dirt phytolith analysis. Tiny plant silica traces from a terrace section indicated maize cultivation, though researchers caution it's a pilot result and needs further testing with additional archaeobotanical methods. This is the kind of detail that turns mystery into evidence. The stones weren't just walls. They were part of food production, possibly supporting large populations across the escarpment. The Bakoni circles were not invisible. They were misinterpreted. One landmark study explains how early researchers visited the stone-walled sites in the early 20th century, but the field did not develop smoothly. The first comprehensive architectural investigation is credited to E.C.N. van Hoopen in 1939, and then, after 1948, research attention dropped sharply. It wasn't until the early 1960s that Revel Mason launched a major research program using aerial photographs to map distribution. In the region discussed, Mason identified 1,792 stone-walled sites, a number that suddenly revealed the phenomenon as regional, not local. Later surveys, including work by T.M. Evers and others, deepened the picture. This is one of the strangest parts of the story. The landscape was there, but understanding required a shift in method from ground wandering to aerial thinking. Another mystery isn't only what they built, but how they adapted. Researchers describe different site categories, open valley homesteads, that appear suited to peaceful life, and denser terraced clusters in steep valleys, kloofs that may have functioned as refuges or fortresses, especially later as conflict increased. That raises a chilling possibility. Parts of the Bakoni landscape may be a map of insecurity, where settlement design encodes social pressure, raiding, shifting alliances, or defense needs. Even the name is complicated. Bokoni is often described as a pre-colonial agro-pastoral society in Mpumalanga, occupied in varying forms roughly between about 1500 and 1820 AD. But modern scholarship critiques overly narrow ethnic labels and warns that pottery styles don't automatically equal one people, one tribe, one language. The 2012 synthesis emphasizes that interdisciplinary work created a more periodized account and challenged ethnically determined conceptions of identity. So the mystery here is historical as well as archaeological. We can trace walls, roads, and terraces in stone, but the human story behind them, how communities merged, split, traded, and governed, remains only partially recoverable. If Bakoni landscape engineering was so extensive, why does it feel lost? Part of the answer is practical grass cover, modern land use, private farms, forestry erosion, and time can swallow low stone walls. Another part is intellectual. For a long time, these ruins were treated as just cattle kraals, not as evidence of a sophisticated agricultural system. But the deeper mystery remains: what combination of conflict, political change, and economic shifts drove the system's decline? By the 19th century, the stones don't give us a single dramatic collapse scene. Instead, they preserve something more haunting, a civilization-scale plan that stopped being maintained and slowly turned back into hillside. A desert can hide a secret by burying it, but it can also hide it by putting it somewhere so inconvenient that most people never go there. In Sudan's Butana steppe, a semi-desert where seasonal wadis cut through open plains, the ruined city of Naga, often spelled Naga, sits roughly 170 kilometers northeast of Khartoum and about 50 kilometers east of the Nile, close enough to depend on the river world, yet far enough to make every major construction choice feel intentional. Here stands the Temple of Epidemic, often called the Lion Temple. And what grips you first is not a statue or a treasure, but the platform, a raised stone base and controlled approach that turns geography itself into part of the message. Compared with Egypt's river logic, where monumental temples are typically anchored to the Nile as transport artery and ritual spine, Naga reads like a counter-argument, an inland sacred center built where water and movement have to be managed rather than assumed. The contrast is not just aesthetic, it is the first mystery. If the Nile was the obvious stage for power, why would the Kushite kingdom of Meroe invest in a monumental religious district out in the steppe where hauling stone, food, timber, and tools becomes a project inside the project? The Naga project describes Naga as a secondary royal residence founded around 250 BCE, flourishing in the 2nd century CE and covering about 1 square kilometer at its height. The city center alone holds over 15 temple and palace buildings, whose floor plans remain visible on ruined mounds, evidence of planning at an urban scale, not a lonely shrine. Another Naga project page pushes the scale further. It states that while 3 temples survived, well enough to be excavated, documented, and restored since 1995, 50 more temples, palaces, and administrative buildings remain concealed under rubble mounds, and a vast necropolis with hundreds of graves still awaits excavation. Those numbers change what the platform means, because a platform in ancient temple architecture is rarely neutral. It solves practical problems, leveling drainage load, distribution, but it also manufactures psychology, elevation, announces authority, and a raised threshold makes entry feel earned, controlled, even initiated. At Naga, the platform intensifies the hardest question archaeology can't answer with a single artifact. How did builders organize desert logistics? Even if much sandstone was local, a project that produces crisp relief carving and a formal pylon facade implies skilled specialists, consistent measurement, and sustained provisioning. Someone had to survey the ground, align walls, grade the approach, and keep labor fed and hydrated in a landscape where mistakes are punished quickly. The platform is, in that sense, a fossil of administration, proof that Kushite power could mobilize labor and maintain a construction supply chain away from the river's daily safety net. But the platform is only the stage. The script is carved on the pylon in imagery that is familiar and strange at the same time. Smart History notes that these pylon reliefs were commissioned by King Natakamani and Queen Amanitora in the 1st century CE and dedicated to Epidemic. It also highlights a startling detail that feels like a visual riddle rather than decoration. On the same pylon, Epidemic appears in 3 different forms: lion-headed, human fierce lion, and lion-headed cobra. In many temple traditions, the rules of divine depiction are stable. Here the rules bend, and when rules bend, it usually means the symbol mattered enough to deserve complexity. Why show the same god as multiple entities, protector with layered manifestations? Political metaphor for royal power or cosmic force that cannot be reduced to one body. Ancient viewers likely read those shifts instantly. Modern viewers are left translating a language with missing grammar. That becomes the second mystery of the platform. It does not just elevate stone. It elevates a symbol system we only partly understand. The third mystery is the one that should be easiest, but isn't: the prisoners. Even when captives are prominently displayed in royal domination scenes, descriptions note that who these prisoners were is unclear, which leaves 2 competing readings that both transform the platform's purpose. If the prisoners are literal enemies from real campaigns, then the raised approach acts like a border sign planted in stone, warning travelers in the steppe corridor that this territory answers to Natakamani and Amanitore. If the prisoners are symbolic chaos rather than a named people, then the platform becomes a ritual machine. You climb toward the pylon, witness disorder, subdued, and step into a space where order is guaranteed by the god and the royal couple. And that royal couple is not a footnote. Smart history emphasizes that Kushite visual conventions of power were similar to Egypt's, yet conformed to Kushite gender norms, with the queen's authority displayed monumentally rather than quietly, so Naga borrows an imperial grammar and rewrites the sentence. Here comparison becomes evidence. Egypt's river temples often broadcast kingship as a single towering figure anchored to watery geography. Naga broadcasts kingship as a paired public force anchored to an inland crossroads. The wider site supports the crossroads idea. Naga includes a structure commonly nicknamed the Roman kiosk, a small building whose very label signals contact across world's Mediterranean Nile and African interior networks during an era when Meroe traded and negotiated identity in multiple directions. So the platform can be read as a social technology, a place where travelers, pilgrims, and officials encountered the state's story before they encountered the god. Archaeology adds a final layer to the mystery because Naga's modern investigation is unusually late, which means context is still being built season by season. A scholarly discussion notes that Europeans did not visit Naga until 1822. Linon de Belfond, then Frederic Caillot, that Richard Lepsius led the first scientific documentation in 1844, and most strikingly, that no excavation was undertaken until February 1994, when Professor Dietrich Wildung and his team from the Egyptian Museum of Berlin received a license to excavate. That timeline, 1822 observation, 1844 documentation, 1994 first excavation, explains why Naga can feel simultaneously known and unknown. The monument has been visible for nearly 2 centuries, yet the stratigraphy surrounding structures, conservation record, and micro-evidence that turn a temple into a fully contextualized story are comparatively new. The Naga project reports that since 1995, 3 well-preserved temples have been excavated, documented, and restored, reinforcing that Naga is still in the phase where every restoration season clarifies one question and opens another. UNESCO's broader framework, the island of Meroe, listing places Naga within a system of Kushite sacred political monuments designed to hold power together across distance, hinting that what looks like an isolated desert temple is actually one node in a larger strategy of visibility and control. Put all of this back onto the platform, and a final, unsettling thought appears. The platform is not merely what the temple stands on, it is what the kingdom stood on. It compresses Kushite choices, where to build, whom to impress, what symbols to emphasize, and how to choreograph belief through architecture. We can measure distances, date royal patrons, and map the city's scale. We can cite the archaeology milestones and repeat the site's numbers, about 1 square kilometer in the Naga project description, over 15 major buildings visible on ruin mounds, claims of 50 more buried structures, and hundreds of graves. But the platform keeps asking what numbers cannot finalize. Why here? Why this god in shifting forms? Why display enemies without names? And why turn an inland steppe sanctuary into a monumental threshold that behaves like a statement to the world? Archaeologists can propose grounded functions, ritual staging political theater, or wayfinding for movement networks, but the platform's power is that it supports all 3 at once. Raised architecture forces procession. It regulates sightlines, delays the moment of entry, and makes the pylon's images unavoidable. In a step setting, where some scholarly estimates place the overall site coverage around 1.5 square kilometers, the Lion Temple platform also acts like a beacon of order in a wide, quiet landscape, a place where the state's presence becomes physical long before a visitor reaches the sanctuary doors. Until more of those buried mounds are excavated and more inscriptions, objects, and micro-evidence are published, the platform will remain what it has always been, an engineered question mark, built by a kingdom confident enough to plant its mystery in the desert and call it sacred. In the flat, wind-scoured steppe of northern Iraq, Hatra hides its biggest secret in plain sight, not a lost treasure, but a lost procedure. At the city's center sits a huge rectangular temenos-oriented east-west, surrounded by its own wall, and then split again by an internal wall into two unequal spaces, commonly read as a large courtyard and a smaller courtyard/sanctuary zone, where the main sanctuaries cluster as if sacred access here was designed like a layered filter, city arrow enclosure, arrow in a precinct. Inside that enclosure, the sacred core is not a single main temple with a few side chapels. UNESCO describes 7 temples and shrines, each dedicated to a deity and all featuring iwans, open halls with high barrel-vaulted roofs presented as a Parthian innovation, so the inner precinct becomes a network of holy nodes rather than a lone shrine dominating everything. And then the architecture turns theatrical. In the smaller courtyard, a row of 8 contiguous consistent iwans forms a monumental facade, measured at about 115 meters long and 23 meters wide, known as the Great Temple, with rooms and a pilastered portico running around the rectangular enclosure. Those numbers matter because they hint at capacity and choreography, spaces built not merely to house a statue, but to stage movement, to frame crowds, to control what is seen and what remains hidden behind thresholds. Yet the script is gone. Archaeology can map walls, doorways, courtyards, and vaults, but it cannot reliably reconstruct the step-by-step ritual algorithm: who entered first, where the procession turned, which moments were public, which were restricted, what the inner wall actually did socially. Did it separate ranks, genders, initiates, priestly guilds, or different cult calendars? The more you look, the more the inner precinct feels less like a pretty temple district and more like a controlled machine for belief. And that is the first ancient mystery: why build holiness like a fortress inside a fortress? The second mystery is the contradiction between the city's defensive DNA and its sacred ambition. UNESCO's own measurements of Hatra's fortifications read like an engineering manifesto: an outer earthen bank with a circumference of 9 kilometers, an inner main wall roughly 2 kilometers in diameter, strengthened by 171 towers, and a ditch 4 to 5 meters deep and about 8 to 14 meters wide, plus 4 fortified gates aligned roughly to the cardinal points. A city that quantifies itself like that is a city obsessed with controlled boundaries, so it is hard not to see the inner sacred precinct as a spiritual echo of the military plan: layered defense translated into layered access. That idea gets sharper when you remember Hatra's legend of impregnability. UNESCO states that the fortifications successfully defended the city against Roman armies led by Trajan in 116 CE and by Septimius Severus in 198 CE, the kind of historical flex that turns a frontier kingdom into a myth. If Hatra could deny emperors at the walls, why wouldn't it also deny ordinary people at the thresholds of its gods? But then a third mystery appears. Hatra was not just a fortress, It was an important religious, social, and economic center for the wider region, and UNESCO explicitly ties its growth to the religious factor from a small village in the 1st century BC to a large kingdom by the mid-2nd century AD. So the inner precinct had to do two opposite things at once: project sacred magnetism outward while keeping the deepest core controlled, like a temple that must be both public beacon and private vault. That tension is what makes Hatra feel more encrypted than other desert cities. Compare it to Palmyra. Palmyra's ruins often read like an urban showpiece, colonnades civic display, commerce made monumental, where the city performs itself in broad daylight. Hatra performs differently. It frames the sacred like a staged reveal, where walls and courtyards act like chapters in a ritual book with missing pages. Compare it to Dryaropos on the Euphrates. Adura feels like a frontier archive, preserving a collage of religions side by side. Hatra feels like a frontier vault, preserving a controlled sacred core whose full logic refuses to surface. And yet Hatra also mocks the usual mystery equals no evidence trope because it left an abundance of textual traces. A major linguistic study speaks of roughly 600 Aramaic inscriptions from Hatra, enough to prove a complex civic and religious life, but still not enough to reassemble the full choreography of the inner sacred precinct, because inscriptions often record dedications, names, and status more readily than the moving sequence of a festival day. That is the cruel paradox. The city talks, but not in the language we most need. Even the scale of the sanctuary underscores this. Encyclopedia Britannica describes the central temenos as covering about 3 acres, roughly 1.2 hectares, and being dominated by the Great Temple, emphasizing just how concentrated and monumental the sacred infrastructure was. Put those figures beside UNESCO's facade, dimensions 115 by 23 meters, and the inner precinct stops being a temple area and starts looking like an engineered ritual landscape designed for repeated mass events, processions, controlled sightlines, and segregated access. Which brings us to the 4th mystery: how this system changed over time. The stones indicate phases, additions, repairs, evolving layouts, implying shifts in ritual needs, political messaging, or cult emphasis. But the reasons are mostly inferred rather than read directly from a surviving manual. What we do know is that scholars and archaeologists have been circling this puzzle for more than a century. Encyclopedia Iranica notes that Walter André was the first to measure, survey, and record the ruins during 1906 to 1911, and that systematic excavations were undertaken only from 1951 by Iraqi archaeologists who initially concentrated on the Great Temple and over time uncovered additional shrines, gates, and tombs. That timeline matters because it shows the inner precinct has been studied in waves: early documentation, then decades of excavation that clarified architecture and finds, yet still left the central question intact: how did the inner precinct function as lived religion? UNESCO adds another layer by noting that many rooms of the temenos have been used as a local museum, and that conservation and restoration have played a major role in restoring walls and buildings. Meaning what we see today is not only ancient design, but also modern stabilization, useful for preservation. But another reminder that the original feel of movement, crowds, and sound is hard to recreate. And sound is a final quiet mystery in itself. An Iwand precinct, built of vast vaults and courtyards, would have shaped acoustics, calls, chants, proclamations into something deliberate. But we can only guess how that sonic architecture was used because the material survives better than the moment. So if you want the best ancient mystery angle on Hatra's inner sacred precinct, it's this: the site is not mysterious, because it is unknown. It's mysterious because it is partly known in all the wrong ways. We can count the towers, 171, measure the ditch, 4 to 5 meters deep, 8 to 14 wide, trace the outer bank, 9 kilometers, and list the 7 temples and shrines. We can stand in front of a 115-meter-long E1 facade and feel how it was meant to overwhelm, yet we still cannot confidently answer the most human question on a single festival day, when the city believed its gods were present, who moved through which threshold? What did they see? What did they not see? And what sequence of actions turned architecture into certainty? Hatra's sacred core feels like it was designed to reveal meaning only to those who already knew the steps. And that is why, 2,000 years later, it still behaves exactly like a locked system, perfectly visible, painstakingly measured, and still refusing to give up its password. In the desert town of Nushabad near Kashan, the most unnerving ancient city is the one you can't see, because it was built to vanish beneath ordinary alleys, and adobe homes lies Uyi the Nushabad underground city, a hand-carved 3-level refuge that functions less like a cellar and more like an emergency alternate reality, an entire settlement layer designed to swallow a population when the surface becomes unsafe. Reports and technical overviews describe a dense web of corridors, chambers, shafts, and wells arranged vertically across multiple stories, with commonly cited depths around roughly 4 to 18 meters, and some architectural discussions describing sections dug to about 20 meters deep enough to muffle heat movement and panic, yet close enough to be accessed quickly from everyday life. What makes the place feel ancient mystery isn't only scale. It's intent away from main entrances. Many passages keep to a human tight height of about 170 to 180 centimeters, and the approach routes are narrow and nested, forcing single-file movement and making every turn a controlled decision architecture that behaves like a defensive rulebook rather than a random tunnel network. Nushabad's stealth is also its genius accounts emphasize distributed access points that could be hidden within ordinary structures, implying that in a crisis, families didn't need to run across exposed streets toward one bunker entrance. They could drop out of sight from the fabric of the town itself, a design choice that only makes sense if sudden raids, conflict, or abduction were lived realities rather than abstract fears. Then there's the darker edge. Heritage descriptions and repeated summaries emphasize defensive tricks, maze geometry, choke points, and mentions of trap-like features intended to slow or punish intruders. Whether that means concealed drops, misleading turns, or structural choices that make pursuit dangerous for anyone who doesn't already know the route map by memory. And survival underground isn't only about hiding. It's about time. Sources routinely describe the Undercity as a place where people could remain for days, which quietly demands the unglamorous engineering of ventilation and water access. Air must circulate between levels, and the deeper chambers must connect somehow to the broader Iranian tradition of subterranean water infrastructure, Payabi/Kanat logic. Otherwise, days becomes impossible. This is where Nushabad stops being a curiosity and starts feeling like a sophisticated response to recurring danger. Not a single-era monument, but a system that could be activated, repaired, expanded, and reactivated. That layered history shows up in how modern summaries frame its lifespan. Popular timelines often associate origins with the Sasanian period, 3rd to 7th century CE, yet heritage reporting also stresses later emergency use, especially during the 13th century Mongol invasions, and notes the complex, was eventually abandoned in the early 20th century, suggesting a long arc of the town goes underground when the world above turns violent. Archaeology, meanwhile, doesn't close the mystery, it keeps it open. Scholarly and bibliographic references point to at least one early excavation season report in the early 2000s, often cited as an unpublished first-season report archived within Iran's cultural heritage bodies, while official protection brought a clearer public milestone. Nushabad was inscribed on Iran's National Heritage List in 2006, and the fact that excavation headlines still appear shows the site is not finished in the research sense. A Tehran Times report from October 1, 2022, explicitly describes new excavations aimed at shedding more light on the underground city, underscoring that mapping interpretation and documentation remain incomplete, with unanswered questions about extent, phases, and function still very much alive. To understand what's truly strange about Nushabad, it helps to compare it to the most famous underground benchmark, Derinkuyu in Cappadocia, Turkey, a multi-level undercity carved into volcanic rock that extends to roughly 85 meters and is often described as capable of sheltering up to about 20,000 people, an underground fortress so deep it feels like a separate geological phenomenon. Nushabad is shallower by comparison, but that contrast reveals its unique horror. Derinkuyu reads like a deep citadel. Nushabad reads like an urban disappearing mechanism woven into domestic life, less about maximum depth and more about maximum stealth, rapid access and confusion tactics in tight spaces. That difference also sharpens the mysteries that remain. How far does the network really spread beneath the modern town? And how much is still sealed or undocumented? Who coordinated construction and maintenance across generations when the design implies rules, shared knowledge, and controlled secrecy? And what was the primary driver at the beginning, defense against raiders, climate refuge, or a multi-purpose system that shifted roles as centuries changed? In the end, Nushabad's ancient mystery is not supernatural. It's human, and therefore more chilling. A community engineered a second city beneath its own feet, built not for glory, but for repetition, implying that the true story isn't merely how they dug it, but how often they needed it, until one era finally arrived when the town stopped disappearing and the underground began turning from living memory into archaeology. The desert has its own kind of silence, and at Meroe, that silence is shaped into a wall that refuses to behave. Not a neat rectangle, not a ceremonial axis drawn with a ruler, but an irregular trapezoid of stone. What UNESCO's documentation calls the Royal City, the core of the Meroe royal enclosure, built like a deliberate contradiction power at the center. Yet geometry left imperfect, as if the planners cared less about symmetry and more about what the wall could control. In the official UNESCO dossier, the facts are already strange enough. The Royal City is an irregular trapezoidal stone-walled area with 4 gates, and inside it sit the so-called royal baths and 4 temples. Some blocks in the wall even bear mason's marks in Greek, and the suggested date range for the wall runs from the second half of the 3rd century BCE to the mid-2nd century CE, centuries of possible rebuilding compressed into one enclosure. That long span matters because a royal core that changes over centuries can stop being one thing. It becomes a palimpsest, where old sacred anchors, new dynastic propaganda, and practical city control overlap, until the true function becomes a moving target. This is why Meroe's core is perfect ancient mystery material. It isn't mysterious because nothing is known, but because the most important features create competing explanations that still won't collapse into a single clean answer. UNESCO's World Heritage page frames the larger property as the royal city of the Kushite kings at Meroe and places it in the broader heartland of Kush, a major power from the 8th century BCE to the 4th century CE, reminding us this was not a footnote civilization, it was a state with the scale and continuity to redesign its capital core multiple times. And UNESCO has even issued modern calls to protect the site, for example, in January 2024, a reminder that what remains is fragile and that future fieldwork could still shift interpretations. So what exactly is the Royal Enclosure Core Palace District, Sacred Precinct, Administrative Fortress, or a calculated fusion of all three? The architecture hints at the fusion. A normal imperial core often separates the sacred from the operational. Think of Rome, where public bath culture became a social machine, or later capitals, where bureaucracy and temple precincts sit in distinct zones. But at Meroe, temples sit inside the walled core, and a monumental water complex sits beside them like a message carved into the city plan. Rule here is not only enforced, it is performed. The problem is the most crucial temple inside/along this core, Temple M260 dedicated to Amun, has a research history that itself creates mystery. Scholar Krzysztof Grzymski describes the Amun Temple at Meroe M260 as the second largest Kushite temple after B500 at Jebel Barkal, yet emphasizes that it has never been properly investigated because John Garstang excavated it hurriedly during the last month of his 1909 to 1910 campaign. He shows how the early plan, later corrections, and the disturbance of context leave modern researchers reconstructing the temple's phases like a puzzle missing edge pieces. This is the kind of ancient mystery that doesn't rely on myths at all. The early 20th century gave Meroe global attention, but speed and documentation standards of that era can blur exactly the evidence we now need. Most, how the temple was modified, how its spaces were used, and how it interacted with royal authority over time. We do know the broader excavation framework. Garstang's Liverpool work at Meroe ran between 1909 and 1914, a foundational period that uncovered major areas but also inevitably left later scholars with questions that only careful restudy and modern methods can address. Then the story shifts from temple mystery to water mystery, because inside this royal core sits an anomaly that almost reads like a different civilization's signature: the royal baths. The German Archaeological Institute describes the building as without parallel in the Meroitic Empire, a water basin measuring 7 meters by 7 meters and about 2.40 meters deep, with an exedra containing 4 majestic seats surrounded by a garden with open water channels leading into the basin in front of a richly decorated show wall with sculpture faience and wall paintings, and even a central element from which water flowed into the basin. If you try to force this into a familiar box, it's just a bath. The numbers fight back. 7 by 7 meters is not a private tub. 2.40 meters deep is not casual soaking. And 4 monumental seats arranged like thrones in a staged exedra makes far more sense as ceremony than hygiene. Compare it to Roman baths. Rome builds bathing as public life crowds, routine status performed through accessibility. Meroe builds water as restricted spectacle, inside a walled royal zone status, performed through controlled access. The deeper implication is political. In a semi-desert landscape, commanding water is commanding survival, and turning water into architecture is turning engineering into ideology. That's why many interpretations hover ritual purification, royal healing, diplomatic theater, seasonal ceremonies, or a courtly water liturgy we don't have the vocabulary to name yet. And unlike many mystery site claims, this one has a modern research trail. Work on the so-called royal baths was carried out across multiple seasons, 2001/2000 and 2004 and 2005, by a joint mission of Sudan's NCAM and the German Archaeological Institute DAI, producing updated documentation and analysis rather than a single sensational dig. Even conservation architecture has been built around it, and project descriptions note the baths were first excavated in 1912 by the University of Liverpool and are now the focus of a joint DAI-NCAM research project, underlining that this is an active scientific problem, not a closed case. So the royal enclosure core gives us a rare trio inside one locked zone, a major Amun temple whose excavation history muddies its architectural biography, a bath complex that looks engineered for ceremony, and a walled plan whose irregular geometry suggests layered building phases and inherited sacred anchors rather than a single blueprint. But Meroe adds another twist that many capitals don't. The royal city sits in a broader landscape, famous for ironworking remains, and research is still rewriting how industrial activity relates to elite space. An antiquity article on the ironworking remains at the royal city of Meroe emphasizes that these metallurgical traces are among the most famous in Africa and have long attracted attention, yet remain an evolving research field where distribution chronology and interpretation are being refined. Complementary research notes the use of integrated approaches, surface mapping, and reanalysis of earlier excavation grids alongside more recent excavations to build a fuller picture of metallurgical remains across phases, reinforcing that Meroe is not just pyramids and palaces, but also production and logistics on a city scale. This matters for mystery storytelling because it complicates the classic ancient capital model. Many societies keep sacred authority cleanly separate from production's smoke, but Meroe's identity is entangled with iron, and that raises high-stakes questions. Did industrial wealth finance royal building programs? Did ironworking have ritual status? Did the state control production as a pillar of kingship? Archaeology is still testing these links, meaning the royal core's meaning cannot be fully decoded without the city's economic engine. Put all of this beside another famous walled sacred city, say, Hatra's inner precinct, where defensive grandeur and religious centrality are explicit, and Meroe feels subtler and therefore more unsettling. It doesn't simply declare this is a temple city or this is a palace fortress. It blends temple wall water spectacle and industrial context until the core behaves like a machine that produces legitimacy by multiple outputs at once: divine sanction, engineered control of life-giving water, and material power. And then comes the final locked door. Meroe left writing Meroitic scripts and inscriptions, so the civilization did not vanish silently. Yet gaps in interpretation and gaps created by early excavation histories mean the royal core can still hold messages we can see without fully grasping the intent behind them. The result is an ancient mystery that stays honest, not a fantasy of the unknown, but a real documented puzzle where the best evidence points in more than one direction. The UNESCO dossier gives the core's hard anchors, irregular trapezoid, 4 gates, 4 temples, the royal baths, Greek masons' marks, and a date window from late 3rd century BCE to mid-2nd century CE. While modern specialist work reminds us that even key monuments like the Amun Temple M260 can be known and still not truly understood because the archaeological record itself has a biography. So if you want the sharpest mystery question to leave hanging over the royal enclosure core, it's this: was the wall built to protect a palace, to frame a sacred theater, or to seal a political technology temple, plus water, plus controlled access, designed to make kingship feel inevitable? Until the remaining layers of architecture, water engineering, inscriptions, and industrial chronology are stitched into one timeline without contradictions, Meroe's royal heart remains what it has been for centuries: an open ruin that still behaves like a locked room. If you walk into the Great Ball Court at Chichen Itza expecting a silent ruin, the place corrects you immediately, not with a voice, but with physics. This open-air arena is often described by archaeologists as the largest and best-preserved ball court in ancient Mesoamerica, and its size is not a footnote, roughly 168 meters long and 70 meters wide, with the parallel flanking platforms stretching about 95 meters and walls rising around 8 meters high. In most outdoor spaces, that large a single clap dissolves into a vague blur. Here, many visitors report something stranger. One sharp hand clap returns as a tight sequence of distinct rebounds, popularly packaged as the 7 echoes. The number itself is part folklore. Exact counts can shift with position, humidity, crowd noise, and how sharp the clap is. But the underlying phenomenon is consistent with a known acoustic behavior that can occur between long, hard, nearly parallel surfaces, a powerful flutter echo that machine guns the sound back and forth, rather than letting it decay smoothly. What makes this feel like an ancient mystery isn't merely that echoes exist. It's that they feel organized, like the building is counting in pulses, turning a human gesture into a rhythmic response. Then the court goes further. Beyond the claps and rebounds is a second claim that pushes the story out of tourist theater and into scholarly argument: a whispering gallery effect. The idea that speech can carry between far points along the structure with surprising clarity, even though the court has no roof and is open to the sky. Normally, whispering galleries are the domain of domes and curved corridors. Here, the alleged gallery is a giant limestone rectangle under daylight, which is precisely why acousticians ended up debating whether the effect was real, reproducible, or just guided storytelling. In technical discussions associated with acoustician David Lubman, the Great Ball Court is described as having 2 remarkable acoustical features: the profound flutter echo between the parallel walls and a whispering gallery that can permit voice communication between temples located about 460 feet, 140 meters apart, an extraordinary distance to claim for an outdoor space. The controversy became sharp enough that Lubman later framed the question in the most archaeological way possible: is the whispering gallery a modern anomaly or an original feature? And the reason that question matters is not mystical at all. It's historical. Chichen Itza is not a perfectly untouched ruin. In 1923, the Mexican government awarded the Carnegie Institution a 10-year permit, later extended, that enabled extensive excavation and restoration. And during that same period, the Mexican government excavated and restored major monuments, including El Castillo and the Great Ball Court itself. Restoration changes edges, surfaces, joints, and continuity, exactly the subtle variables that can strengthen or weaken how sound slides, reflects, and channels. So even if you demonstrate a whispering effect today, a skeptic can argue it's an artifact of reconstruction, repaired stonework, or aging. That is why the debate is so durable. The phenomenon is testable, but the original intent is not. Yet the story refuses to collapse into modern myth because accounts tied to excavation-era observations complicate the easy dismissal. Lubman notes that two remarkable acoustic features were noticed during excavation in the 1920s, though not fully explained or interpreted at the time, which implies the oddities were not invented by recent viral tourism alone, and the debate did not remain abstract. Lubman's later account describes how contemporary reports of whispering galleries and other sonic effects were dismissed by some, with a few even disbelieving that such whispering galleries exist today, until an on-site demonstration after the fall 2002 joint acoustical meeting in Cancun convinced about 100 acousticians and companions that the effect could be experienced in place. That detail matters for ancient mystery storytelling because it pins the phenomenon to a moment of modern expert scrutiny rather than leaving it floating in anonymous legend. But the most unsettling part is not the modern demonstration. It's how neatly sound fits the court's sacred purpose. The Great Ball Court is not decorated like a sports venue. At the base of the interior walls are sculpted panels of ball players, including a scene where one player is decapitated and the wound emits streams of blood rendered as wriggling serpents, a visual program that makes the arena feel less like a game field and more like ritual theater. When you stand inside a structure that depicts beheading and serpent blood, then clap and hear the stone answer in bursts, it becomes easy to see how acoustics could amplify authority. A priest ruler or officiant speaking from a favored position might seem larger than human if the architecture helps the voice travel and the walls respond to impact with dramatic, fluttering rebounds. That idea is not pulled from thin air. Scholarly summaries of Lubman's work explicitly discuss sound reinforcement features at Chichen Itza's monuments, improving a ruler's or priest's ability to address crowds, and they connect the Great Ball Court's flutter echoes to dramatic, mythic, and practical significance, while also noting other site acoustics, such as hand claps at Kukulkan's stimulating chirps compared to a revered bird, suggesting a broader pattern in which architecture sensation and belief reinforce each other. Here, the comparison becomes chilling. In many famous whispering gallery settings around the world, sound magic is a byproduct of curvature, like a cathedral trick of geometry. At Chichen Itza, the alleged trick occurs in a massive open-air ritual corridor of stone, implying either an accidental convergence of dimensions or a learned tradition of shaping space to shape crowds. The Seven Echoes meme thrives because it sits perfectly on that knife edge. It can be explained by acoustics, yet it still feels intentional when experienced. Archaeology adds another layer by showing that the Great Ball Court is not only a sound stage, but also a locus of objects and discoveries that keep interpretation open. A specialized study discusses the Great Ball Court stone, an unusual carved limestone artifact associated with the court, and reported as discovered in 1923 by Miguel Ángel Fernández, with later documentation tying it to museum catalog references. Debates around such objects illustrate how even a single artifact can spawn competing hypotheses about purpose and symbolism. And if you widen the lens beyond the court itself, the site continues to produce high-profile finds connected to the ball game tradition. For example, Mexico's National Institute of Anthropology and History announced a circular carved stone, interpreted as a ball game scoreboard, discovered at Chichen Itza and reported in 2023, reminding us that even at heavily studied sites, the material record still shifts and surprises. Put all of this together, and the ancient mystery becomes precise rather than vague. We can measure the court, and describe its scale. We can document that major excavation and restoration occurred in the 1920s, and that restoration complicates claims of originality. We can cite modern acoustic work arguing for both flutter echo and whispering gallery behavior, and even recount an expert demonstration after the 2002 Cancun meeting. We can point to iconography of sacrifice that makes acoustic responses feel like part of ritual design rather than a random quirk. But we still cannot answer the question that matters most for any story about lost knowledge. Did the builders of Chichen Itza intentionally tune this arena to make sound behave like a supernatural witness, turning claps into pulses and whispers into long-distance communication? Or did the limestone simply happen to form a perfect acoustic trap, and later generations, hearing the stone answer back, stitched physics into prophecy? The Great Ball Court's 7 echoes endure because they are measurable enough to be real, theatrical enough to feel designed, and historically entangled enough that certainty slips away the moment you think you've solved it. With science, archaeology reminds you the building you're testing is also a restored monument, a ritual stage, and a cultural text, one that may have been engineered not just to be seen, but to be heard. In the shadows of Europe's ancient past, a silver treasure suddenly emerged from the cold depths of a peat bog, and to this very day, it remains the greatest challenge for every researcher. The Gundestrup cauldron is not only a masterpiece of metalwork that far surpasses the limits of the era in which it was created, but also a symbol of mysterious connections between distant civilizations, who made it for what purpose and by what technique that even modern humanity has yet to replicate. Every detail, every silver relief on the cauldron conceals messages, rituals, and unsolved mysteries, challenging every explanation from science to imagination. More than a century after its discovery, the Gundestrup cauldron is still the black box of ancient Europe, drawing all eyes and raising endless questions about craftsmanship, power, and things never before known in human history. What do you think is the greatest mystery of the Gundestrup cauldron? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The Gundestrup cauldron was found by chance by farmers clearing a peat bog near the village of Gundestrup in northern Denmark. As the thick layers of mud were removed intricately, carved silver plates appeared under the dim sunlight, leaving local experts stunned. No one could have imagined that in remote northern Europe, a place with so few traces of vibrant ancient civilizations, such a masterpiece of metalwork, both massive and exquisitely crafted, could exist. When reassembled, the cauldron stands about 42 centimeters tall, with a diameter of up to 69 centimeters, comprising a total of 13 silver plates, 5 for the exterior, 7 for the interior, and 1 for the base, all joined without the use of modern welding techniques. Each plate is decorated in high relief with lively sculpted figures, rendered in a level of detail rarely seen in any other artifact of the era. What makes the Gundestrup cauldron one of the greatest engineering marvels of the ancient world lies in its rare materials and the transcendent craftsmanship it possesses. The entire cauldron is made from pure silver mixed with a small amount of copper, forming an alloy that retains a brilliant gleaming shine while greatly increasing the object's durability and strength. Modern scientists have analyzed and determined that the amount of silver used to create this cauldron reaches about 9 kilograms, a truly enormous figure by any standard of ancient society, clearly reflecting the immense wealth, power, and high status of its original owner. However, what truly astonishes experts is the extraordinary level of silversmithing achieved by ancient artisans. Around the 2nd to 1st century BCE, when most of Europe was still in the Iron Age, A group of craftsmen were somehow able to roll large sheets of silver into nearly perfect, uniformly thin panels without any peeling, cracking, or unevenness, a feat that still seems almost unbelievable today. They then shaped these silver sheets into incredibly lifelike, three-dimensional reliefs, engraving mythological figures, animals, and geometric motifs with crisp lines that captured depth of motion, posture, and even the finest details such as patterns on armor, animal fur, or snake scales. Even more remarkably, these extremely tiny patterns were carved using only rudimentary tools made from copper, stone, or iron, yet they achieved a level of precision and finesse that even modern technology struggles to match. Some lines are as fine as a single strand of hair. What is even more astonishing is that all of these silver plates were joined together into a perfectly circular form, without any visible welding marks or large seams. Even when carefully reconstructed, experts find it difficult to discern where one piece ends and another begins. The outer surface of the cauldron was polished to such a degree that it could reflect light, and chemical analyses have revealed traces of natural compounds once used to protect the silver from oxidation, clear evidence of highly sophisticated material processing techniques. All of these achievements raise a profound question for humanity. Who were the mysterious artisans behind this masterpiece? Where did they learn such techniques? What technologies did they use? And how were they able to surpass the metallurgical and artistic standards of the rest of ancient Europe? Even today, with access to electron microscopes, spectrometers, and the most advanced modern analytical tools, scientists are still unable to fully replicate these ancient techniques, using only primitive implements as our ancestors once did. Although discovered in Denmark, every technical and artistic aspect of the cauldron hints at much farther-flung civilizations. The decorative motifs, animal forms, mythology, especially the portrayal of half-human, half-animal figures, dragons and snakes, elephants, lions, all are strange to Northern Europe but show resemblance to the Celtic culture of Central Europe or even the Thracian culture in modern Bulgaria. Experts have long debated the origin. Was this a Thracian work commissioned by a wealthy Celtic chieftain? Or was it a trophy that crossed thousands of kilometers by trade or plunder only to be buried in Denmark? The combination of Eastern European silver joining techniques, Celtic decorative art, and religious elements never before seen in Scandinavia makes this cauldron a mysterious hybrid impossible to slot into any single artistic tradition. The cauldron's entire surface is like a silver book filled with mythological codes, including scenes of sacrifice, images of warriors on horseback, horned deities, hybrid creatures, and even animals never seen in Northern Europe. Most notable is the image of the horned god, often believed to be Cernunnos, the forest god of the Celts, sitting cross-legged, holding a snake and a mystical ring surrounded by wild animals. Some motifs even depict warriors being immersed in the cauldron, sparking theories that the object was used in rites of rebirth, sacrifice, or fertility. Animals like elephants, lions, unicorns, and mythical fish, all foreign to the north, further strengthen the argument for an imported origin. To this day, no one can say with certainty what the Gundestrup cauldron was used for. Some believe it was a sacrificial vessel used in grand ceremonies, possibly for human or animal offerings to ensure prosperity and rebirth. The scenes on the cauldron clearly depict rituals, prompting scholars to think it belonged to a mysterious cult or elite class. Others theorize the cauldron was the supreme symbol of a leader's power, embodying both material wealth and spiritual authority. The sheer mass of silver, advanced craftsmanship, and initiates-only symbols all point in this direction. Another big question: why was such a treasure buried in a small Danish bog with no trace of ancient cities or temples nearby? Was it stolen and dumped during war, Was it an offering to local gods or a deliberate act to hide power? No one knows. No similar artifacts have been found in the area, making the cauldron a true oddity in the desert. Upon deeper analysis of the craftsmanship and motifs, archaeologists have found not only Thracian and Celtic fusion, but also Greek elements, and even hints of Asian influence like stylized dragons, wave patterns, and circular motifs. This suggests that in this era, ancient Europe was not isolated, but had intricate cultural trade and artistic connections far beyond what was once believed. More than a century has passed since the Gundestrup cauldron was discovered, yet it remains at the center of hundreds of research projects, numerous documentaries, and countless essays and academic conferences. However, despite the relentless efforts of scientists from around the world, no one has yet managed to perfectly replicate the craftsmanship of this cauldron, using only the ancient tools that our ancestors once employed. There is still no convincing evidence strong enough to definitively determine the true origin of the cauldron, whether it belongs to the Thracian culture, the Celts, or some long-lost civilization. The deeper meaning of the symbols, patterns, and images engraved on its surface remains in the realm of theory, with no final answer widely accepted. The true owner, the cauldron's journey across time, and the reasons it was buried in the cold marshes of Denmark are all forever shrouded by the mist of history, ensuring that the mysteries surrounding this treasure continue to challenge the curiosity and imagination of people today. Across the stormy lands of the Balkans, there once stood a capital city that forced great empires to be wary, only to vanish from the world map as if it had never existed. This was Bilazora, the center of the ancient Paeonian kingdom, where all traces of humanity, power, and knowledge seem to have been buried deep beneath cold layers of earth and stone. No one knows exactly who built those towering walls, nor can anyone explain how an entire civilization could disappear, leaving behind only strange stone blocks that challenge every law of physics known at the time. Today, as archaeologists trace the remnants of Bilazora, they are not merely searching for a lost city. They are confronting one of the greatest questions in human history. How could ancient people construct such monumental works without modern technology? And what happened to that once mighty capital that it now survives only as legend amid the wild heart of the Balkans? What do you think really happened to the city of Bilazora and the Paeonian civilization? Share your thoughts or theories in the comments below. From its very geography, Bilazora demonstrated a strategic importance. Few could rival. It controlled the main artery linking the Balkans with ancient Greece. This city was both a shield against northern tribes and a key opening the way for merchants, soldiers, and even invading armies. Despite being drawn into centuries of power struggles, Bilazora endured, constantly expanding and being reinforced, a clear testament to the organizational and construction skills of the Paeonians. Paeonia, the land, and the people who built Bilazora remains a major mystery in human history. Greek and Roman records describe them as brave warriors with developed agriculture and rich mythologies, but traces of their writing are extremely rare. Most of what we know comes from archaeology and oral legends. The sudden disappearance of Bilazora, the capital of mysteries, makes the region even more alluring. When 20th century archaeologists began to awaken Bilazora from its long slumber, they discovered extremely valuable artifacts, ceramics, coins, weapons, and imposing city walls. Especially fascinating are the legends of royal treasures, unopened tombs, and secrets hidden deep beneath the earth, making Bilazora ever more mysterious. Many believe that only a tiny fraction of this capital has been excavated. The rest is still waiting beneath layers of wild earth and stone. What astonishes archaeologists and researchers most when discussing Bilazora is the construction techniques of the Paeonian people, which far surpassed those of many other ancient cities of their time. The city's walls, gates, and defensive structures were built using massive stone blocks, some up to 2 meters long, and weighing several tons, so precisely fitted together that it is nearly impossible to detect any traces of mortar. The joints were crafted with such meticulous care that even the thinnest blade cannot slip through the gaps, creating a structure whose strength defies not only war and earthquakes, but also the ravages of time. Some sections of wall even employ cyclopean masonry, a style of construction using enormous irregularly shaped stones, similar to the famous sites of Mycenae and Tiryns in Greece, yet bearing distinctly Paeonian characteristics. Many experts believe that the construction methods found here far exceeded the conventional knowledge of neighboring peoples in the same era. One of the greatest mysteries is how the Paeonians could cut, transport, and assemble such massive stones with near-perfect precision without the aid of modern tools. Theories include the use of levers, wooden rollers, the coordinated efforts of skilled craftsmen, and closely guarded secrets passed down through generations. However, archaeological surveys have revealed that some of the cuts at Bilazora are so fine, the corners so perfectly squared, and the surfaces so polished that even modern machinery would be hard-pressed to replicate them. Especially intriguing are sections that bear unusual marks, as if the stones had been subjected to extremely high heat or processed with some unknown technique. Some bold scholars have asked whether the Paeonians once accessed advanced construction knowledge from great civilizations like Egypt, Greece, or Anatolia, or if they themselves invented a lost technology that was far ahead of its time. To this day, this remains a major enigma, placing Bilazora among the most mysterious architectural wonders of the ancient world. Not only remarkable for its above-ground structures, Bilazora also conceals beneath its surface an intricate system of underground sewers, storage chambers, and deep wells, all meticulously reinforced with carefully stacked stones. The city's drainage system was logically designed to prevent flooding, something not every ancient city managed to achieve. Some underground passages used large round stones as lids that could roll along grooves, ensuring both effective protection and easy maintenance. These findings show that the Paeonians were not only adept at building strong fortifications, but also had a deep understanding of hydraulics, wastewater management, and the creation of a stable, sustainable living environment. Moreover, Bilazora's construction techniques reflect strong cross-cultural influences from neighboring civilizations. Certain sections of wall exhibit Macedonian styles, while others show clear local Balkan or Hellenized elements. Nevertheless, Bilazora's overall architecture remains distinctly unique: multi-layered gates, gradually narrowing passageways, sensible zoning of functional areas, and no shortage of defensive traps such as wall niches, hidden steps, or strategic points favoring defenders. This blend has fueled ongoing debates among researchers. Was Bilazora merely a place that borrowed construction techniques from other civilizations? Or was it actually a creative hub, the source and spreader of advanced technologies throughout the region? The archaeological traces remain, but the final answer to the mysteries of Bilazora's construction techniques will likely have to wait for future generations to discover and decode. Besides the astonishing construction, another great enigma of Bilazora is its unexplained disappearance. After Roman conquest, the city was not built over by later civilizations, but slipped into a deep sleep, gradually sinking beneath earth and weeds. No major battle epidemic or natural disaster is recorded, just a long, silent fade over centuries. Archaeologists suggest the capital lost its strategic role, the population left, or perhaps some unrecorded event occurred. The royal tombs and treasures of legend remain unfound. Recent Bilazora excavations have revealed many intriguing things, but also raised more questions. Artifacts such as coins, ceramics, weapons, and precisely assembled walls reflect the prosperity, creativity, and strategic vision of ancient people. Archaeologists have also found many signs of trade objects from Greece, the Balkans, even Anatolia, indicating Bilazora was once a crucial link in the ancient international trade network. To this day, Bilazora has only revealed a small fraction of its mysteries. The wall's strange construction techniques, underground works, and buried tunnels remain hidden. Legends of treasure and tombs are still giant questions. Each excavation season brings shocking new finds, stone blocks with impossible cuts, layers of walls stacked in unusual order, and artifacts unlike anything in the nearby Balkans. All this makes Bilazora a forgotten wonder, a technical and power center that once shaped the Balkans but then mysteriously vanished. The biggest question remains, who built Bilazora? What technology did they use? And why did all traces of this civilization disappear within a few generations? Bilazora is not just an archaeological site, but a symbol of history's unsolved mysteries. From its advanced construction, sophisticated defenses, and infrastructure to its mysterious disappearance, the Paeonian capital reminds us of the limits of our understanding before the achievements of the ancients. Each stone, each wall segment, each artifact is like a tiny piece of a grand puzzle that modern people have yet to complete. Perhaps it will be a long time before the true secrets of Bilazora and its extraordinary construction techniques are fully revealed in the light of history. There are ancient secrets that were never written down in language, but instead lie quietly within each grain of earth, each delicate sculpted line. Tlatico figurines, the unique clay figures of the Tlatico culture, are among the strangest evidence of this truth. Discovered in a land once lost to memory, these tiny statues not only astonish with their surreal appearances, but also leave modern scientists perplexed by a level of craftsmanship that surpasses all technological limits of their era. Each artifact is an open-ended question about creativity, about ancient knowledge, and about the lost arts that vanished thousands of years ago. What ancient secrets or technologies do you think enabled people to create these mysterious Tlatico clay figurines? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Tlatico, meaning place of hidden things in Nahuatl, has long been famous as an archaeological site dating from about 1200 to 400 BCE. Among the hundreds of artifacts found there, the small clay figurines, measuring only about 7 to 12 centimeters in height, attract the most attention. They are not only diverse in form, but also notable for extraordinary features. Some have 2 faces, 2 heads, some lack limbs, and others possess lively modern expressions and postures. These figurines are often meticulously decorated, elaborate hair patterns, earrings, body tattoos, and extremely fine jewelry details, sometimes painted in red or yellow. Some features are so thin, less than 1 millimeter in width, requiring skill and clay-working techniques far surpassing contemporary standards. Right from the stage of selecting clay, Tlatico artisans demonstrated a profound understanding of their materials. The clay used for figurines was carefully filtered to remove all impurities and mixed with water at precisely controlled ratios to achieve ideal plasticity and perfect adhesion. Numerous modern studies have shown that the mineral composition of this clay is extremely uniform, with hardly any grit, allowing artisans to create ultra-fine details without worrying about cracks or damage during firing. But it wasn't just their mastery of materials that set Tlatico craftsmen apart. Their modeling, forming, and carving techniques were truly exceptional. They didn't simply mold single blocks of clay, but skillfully assembled components such as hands, feet faces, and ornaments as separate parts, then joined them so seamlessly that the connections are nearly invisible. The incised lines and carved details on faces, hair, and clothing are all astonishingly consistent and sharp, even at the tiniest scale. Many figurines even depict bodily movement and highly complex daily life postures, like dancing, playing instruments, or carrying children, features that bring a sense of vitality and realism, as if freezing a moment of everyday life in clay, a level of artistry that wouldn't appear in Western art until ancient Greece. But their sophistication did not stop there. The level of surface decoration and finishing on these figurines is equally remarkable. What amazes archaeologists and chemists today is the layer of red, yellow, or black glaze that coats many of them. Most of the red tones come from natural iron oxide, but the hues are so vivid and long-lasting that they haven't faded even after more than 3,000 years underground. Analyses suggest that Tlatico artisans may have invented or mastered secret methods for mixing special natural additives to preserve color exceptionally well, while also controlling kiln temperatures with great precision. Even a slight deviation could burn or fade the glaze. Notably, some figurines are further decorated with rare minerals or fine gold powder applied to areas like the eyes, lips, or earrings, creating a refined and dazzling effect that seems almost unbelievable for the technology of their era. The firing process for Tlatico figurines is itself a major mystery. Instead of firing at low temperatures that could cause cracking, the artisans managed to fire their creations in closed environments at temperatures possibly exceeding 900 degrees Celsius, a level that surpassed most other cultures of the time. Temperature and firing duration were controlled with extreme care. Too much heat would shatter the figurines, too little would leave them weak, and the glaze would not adhere properly. To this day, no one knows exactly what kind of kilns the Tlatico people used, whether they had ventilation systems or secret techniques for controlling heat and air. But the outcome is clear. These figurines have survived almost perfectly intact to the present day, not cracked, not crumbly, not faded, far outstripping the standards of many other civilizations. However, the greatest mystery still lies in the tools they used. How could Tlatico artisans without access to advanced metal tools create details just fractions of a millimeter in size with such consistency and precision? Some theories suggest they may have used fish bones, plant thorns, thin seashell shards, or even semi-precious stones as carving implements, but so far, no clear physical evidence of these tools has been found. Especially striking, many figurines feature tiny, perfectly regular holes on the ears, lips, or along hairlines, as if they were drilled with a superfine bit, applying completely uniform force and absolute precision. If done by hand alone, it would be nearly impossible to achieve such an industrial scale, hundreds of figurines with this level of detail. Some suggest that Tlatico's craftsmanship is not just a product of dexterity, but proof of a sophisticated, long-standing technological tradition, even a craft secret, handed down from generation to generation. Mass production, uniform quality control, and diverse complex designs show that the Tlatico did not make figurines for mere entertainment or for a small group. These were products for the community, major ceremonies even for widespread trade throughout central Mexico. Not limited to technique, the artisans also displayed an artistic vision ahead of their time. Each figurine tells a story reflecting spirituality beliefs or deep-seated aspirations about life, death, rebirth, and mysteries no one has yet unraveled. Some researchers go further, asking whether the Tlatico invented all these techniques themselves or inherited, perhaps learned from a now-lost civilization once existing in Mesoamerica. Techniques like high-temperature kiln, firing, durable glazing, and ultra-fine detail sculpting are all achievements that even famous civilizations such as the Olmec Zapotec or even the ancient Maya would admire. Yet to this day, there is no evidence of technical exchange or the presence of any foreign master. That secret remains buried along with thousands of Tlatico artifacts still to be unearthed. What makes the Tlatico clay figurines one of the greatest mysteries of archaeology lies not only in their surreal and exquisite appearance, but also in a host of unanswered questions. Why is it that only the Tlatico region produced such unique statues, both fantastical and lifelike, with craftsmanship that far surpassed neighboring areas in an era without written language? How did ancient people learn and pass down such refined secrets, ensuring that every generation of artisans maintained such an astonishing level of skill? Could it be that they once employed some primitive form of nano-engineering in mixing glazes and creating micro-details that have withstood the test of time? Or is all of this simply the result of knowledge accumulated over centuries? Many researchers still wonder whether these figurines served purely religious or ceremonial purposes, or if they were actually scientific tools for teaching anatomy, studying deformities, or even reflecting knowledge about the universe and multidimensional space in the minds of ancient Tlatico people. Even more strangely to this day, excavations have yet to uncover any tools truly matching the level of technical sophistication these figurines display. All of this leaves the Tlatico figurines an enduring mystery that continues to challenge the understanding of modern humanity. It is precisely these unsolved mysteries that have turned the Tlatico figurines into unique symbols of ancient creativity and technology. They remind us that the intelligence and creative ability of ancient people could transcend all material limits, leaving behind immortal values of art and knowledge, even without a single written word passed down to future generations. When mentioning Ban Chiang, a humble village in Udon Thani, province northeastern Thailand, most locals only know it as a peaceful land associated with tranquil rice fields and the long-standing history of their ancestors. However, for archaeologists, Ban Chiang holds a major secret powerful enough to overturn conventional perceptions of metallurgical development in Southeast Asia and the wider Asian continent. The story of Ban Chiang is not limited to ancient bronze artifacts or burial mounds, but is a journey in search of answers to one of the greatest mysteries, the true origins of metallurgy, who brought these secrets to Southeast Asia, and who do you think brought metallurgy to Ban Chiang? And how? Share your thoughts in the comments below. In 1966, during a house foundation excavation, a local boy happened to stumble upon a shard of pottery with strange patterns. This event quickly drew the attention of archaeologists, launching a series of large-scale excavations spanning several decades. What they found shocked the world: hundreds of ancient graves, countless pottery items, jewelry, tools, and most notably, bronze artifacts dated to as early as 3,600 years ago, around 1600 BCE. Before this discovery, Most scholars believed that Southeast Asia only developed metallurgy after the technology spread from China, India, or other major civilizations, usually much later by thousands of years. But Banqiang's findings upended everything. Bronze bracelets, blades, and spearheads appearing in archaeological layers even older than those in southern China raised an enormous question about the independent emergence of metallurgy in this region. The bronze artifacts at Banqiang are not only ancient, but also display astonishing technological sophistication. The bronze-tin alloys were mixed with remarkable precision, achieving high quality compared to contemporary cultures. Surface traces show mastery of furnace temperature, control ore processing, impurity removal, and casting, all highly professional techniques. In some specimens, there are even signs of quenching to harden the metal, which requires deep material knowledge. Physical chemical analyses show that some tools possess intricate structures with designs tailored for specific uses, such as farming, hunting, or ritual. This leads to the conclusion Banqiang was not a primitive civilization, but a complex technological hub with clear occupational differentiation and the ability to mass-produce bronze tools of consistent quality. Alongside bronze artifacts, Banqiang is also famous for ceramics, with spiral motifs, geometric patterns, and warm hues. Many pottery pieces were buried with the dead, suggesting complex funeral rites and a belief in the afterlife. The fact that some children's graves were also buried with exquisite bronze tools hints at a stratified society with inherited power and status. These findings highlight the development of Banqiang society and broaden the question who possessed, developed, and spread metallurgical technology here. It is precisely the mystery of metallurgical origins that has made Banqiang an anomaly in world history. Countless major questions have arisen, sparking decades of academic debate. The sudden appearance of sophisticated bronze artifacts leads many to wonder if metallurgy in Banqiang was an indigenous invention. It would mean the local community independently developed the entire technological chain, from mining ore and smelting copper to alloying and casting molds, which is extremely rare in human history. However, if this technology was introduced from elsewhere, who brought it here? All the main trade routes at the time were far away, and there is no evidence of large-scale migration from the north or the west. That's not all. Some researchers argue that Banqiang's bronze culture resulted from intercontinental trade and exchange, especially with ancient Chinese civilizations such as Erlitou and Chiang, or with groups of artisans from West or Central Asia. Yet field surveys have found no direct signs of hybridization, copying, or any stepwise importation of techniques. On the contrary, Banqiang possesses unique technical hallmarks, from the design of furnaces and casting methods to the style of their objects. Remarkably, modern dating methods even suggest that bronze appeared in Banqiang earlier than in some renowned Chinese metallurgical centers, further raising suspicions about the possibility of transcontinental technology transfer. Regarding theories of technological diffusion, some believe there may once have been nomadic artisan groups who carried metallurgical knowledge across regions, but so far there is no clear archaeological evidence of mass migrations or mobile smelting camps. What remains points to the Banqiang community possibly sourcing local copper ore, building their own furnaces, and developing alloying techniques on site, essentially a technological leap right at this location. Another widely debated factor is the mysterious influence from distant cultures. Certain motifs on Banqiang pottery and bronze artifacts show strange similarities to those of cultures as far away as West Asia or even northern China. Although there is no solid proof of trade routes linking these distant regions, the theory of a prehistoric technological exchange network still receives much attention, and it is not impossible that Banqiang was once a convergence point or even an origin point for a vast chain of technological dissemination across Asia and the Pacific. Before the discoveries at Banqiang, Southeast Asia was often considered a technological backwater, a region slow to absorb metallurgical technology compared to major civilizations. However, the new evidence has entirely overturned this stereotype, forcing the world to rewrite the map of technological history and to recognize the possibility of parallel independent inventions among the world's major cultural centers. Another major issue making Banqiang even more puzzling is the debate over artifact dating and methods of age determination. Some scholars believe the bronze artifacts are actually only several thousand years old, and archaeological layers may have been disturbed by natural factors or human activity. Nevertheless, most modern analyses radiocarbon luminescence still support the theory that Banqiang is among the earliest centers of bronze in the world. This makes Banqiang an academic battlefield, with international research teams constantly arriving, even leading to disputes over ownership, preservation, and recognition as a world heritage. Today, Banqiang is recognized by UNESCO as a World Cultural Heritage Site, attracting tens of thousands of visitors and scholars each year. However, the deeper scientists dig, the more deviations from the norm they discover. Metallurgical slag samples, furnace traces, ceramics, and even ancient DNA in graves continue to leave room for bold hypotheses about prehistoric, cross-continental cultural and technological exchanges. International collaborative projects are now experimenting with micro-analytical technologies, isotope analysis, trace element fingerprinting to identify ore sources and materials in an effort to answer the question: did Banqiang develop metallurgy independently, or did it adopt it from outside? If its indigenous origin is proven, it will be an exceptionally rare case of parallel invention, fundamentally changing how we perceive human technological creativity. Conversely, if evidence of technological integration is found, it will expand the prehistoric trade map to an unprecedented scale. It can be said that Banqiang is a true anomaly, a peaceful land hiding beneath its red earth, evidence of technological brilliance, social stratification, unique art, and above all, the secret of the emergence and diffusion of bronze metallurgy. It is this mysterious origin of metallurgical technology that has made Banqiang a global research focal point and a limitless source of inspiration for all questions about human ingenuity, exchange, and dramatic development in prehistory. Although more than 50 years have passed since its discovery, Banqiang has yet to reveal all of its secrets. New findings, modern technology, and the curiosity of scientists continue to probe the question: who brought metallurgical technology to Southeast Asia, and why did this place get ahead of its time? The mystery of the origins of metallurgy at Banqiang remains unsolved, making it one of the most fascinating enigmas, constantly challenging scientific theories and sparking the imagination of humanity. Not everything that vanishes into darkness is forgotten. Some forces once emerged like a collective nightmare, bringing down even civilizations that seemed invincible. The Sea Peoples, those without names, without a homeland, who left behind no legend of themselves, swept across the Mediterranean at the end of the Bronze Age, leaving behind nothing but burned cities, fallen empires, and a vast void in humanity's memory. And yet the greatest mystery remains unsolved. Who were they really? The true identity of the Sea Peoples after more than 3,000 years, is still nothing but vague names on ancient stone stelae and the words of their enemies. Perhaps it is precisely this total absence from history that has turned them into eternal phantoms, forever challenging every researcher who dares to seek the truth. Who do you think the Sea Peoples really were, and why did they vanish without a trace? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Ancient records, especially those of the Egyptians, refer to them only as the peoples from the sea, or list a series of strange names such as Shurden Shekelesh, Luka Peliset Jeka, Denayan Weshesh. However, these names themselves have never been clearly matched to any specific people or region known in the ancient world. Some theories link Shurden to Sardinia Peliset, to the Philistines, Denayan to ancient Greece or Anatolia, modern-day Turkey, but all of these are based only on phonetic similarity with no concrete material or textual evidence. Modern research in genetics, archaeology, and linguistics has not been able to provide any trace of homeland for the Sea Peoples. There is no ancient city, no cemetery, no independent culture ever discovered that can confidently be called the homeland of the Sea Peoples. Instead, they appeared and vanished like a whirlwind, leaving behind only destruction, burned-out sites, and the simultaneous collapse of many great ancient civilizations. It is precisely the ambiguity surrounding their identity that has made the Sea Peoples one of the greatest unsolved questions in all of human history. To this day, scholars have only been able to propose fragmented theories, with none being convincing enough to gain widespread acceptance. Some suggest that the Sea Peoples were ancient Mycenaeans, forced out of their homeland by war or natural disasters, compelled to take to the sea and survive by raiding other lands. Other hypotheses link them to native tribes in Asia Minor, where social conflict and climate change may have triggered mass migrations of coastal communities. There are also viewpoints that some groups among the Sea Peoples originated from the Western Mediterranean, such as Sardinia or Sicily, based on vague similarities between ancient names in historical texts and modern place names, even though there is a complete lack of solid archaeological evidence. The theory that has drawn the most attention argues that the Sea Peoples were not a single unified people, but rather a temporary coalition of many wandering groups driven by poverty, war, and climate upheaval, who were forced to band together for survival. However, all of these theories rest solely on scattered pieces of information, a few strange names, carved on Egyptian stelae, or brief notes in ancient texts that have been damaged by time. There are no maps, no original legends, no complete stories left behind by the Sea Peoples themselves. That is why the question, who were the Sea Peoples, remains to this day like a puzzle with thousands of missing pieces, most of which have been permanently erased by time. Another equally important question that has long puzzled researchers is why the Sea Peoples appeared so violently, causing terrifying upheavals, and then quickly vanished, leaving almost no clear trace in history. Modern theories that attempt to explain this phenomenon are all based on vague and fragmentary clues. It may have been a series of natural disasters, such as prolonged droughts, earthquakes, and widespread famine during the 13th to 12th centuries BC, that forced many coastal communities to abandon their homelands and migrate in search of new places to live. It is also possible that the breakdown of trade networks, social crises, and power struggles throughout the Mediterranean region compelled these groups to form alliances, relying on one another for survival, and resorting to raiding and plundering wealthy civilizations to endure turbulent times. Some scholars even suggest that the rise of the Sea Peoples signals the first great waves of global migration in human history, triggering sudden and sweeping political and social changes. Yet all of these are only hypotheses, because the only evidence for their true motivations is absolute silence. No one knows what they thought, what they wanted, where they truly came from, or where they eventually went. Ironically, All records and legends about the sea peoples that remain were written by their enemies, mainly the Egyptians, deeply colored by a biased perspective and sometimes exaggerated to serve the propaganda purposes of their time. This is why the motives behind the appearance and disappearance of the sea peoples remain such a profound mystery, making this shadowy force in history all the more elusive and enigmatic. One of the few material traces of the sea peoples is the reliefs and murals in the temple of Pharaoh Ramses III Egypt. They are depicted with pointed hats, unusual armor, and weapons not seen before in the Mediterranean. Their coordinated tactics between navy and infantry, their ability to besiege cities and land in force, show that the sea peoples were not simple nomadic tribes, but highly organized warriors, disciplined and astonishingly skilled. It is remarkable. In ancient history, it is rare for an unknown group to simultaneously threaten and topple so many of the strongest civilizations of the time: Egypt, Hittites, Mycenaeans, Ugarit. Their appearance was like a storm, swift, fierce, and mysterious, then gone, leaving enormous consequences behind. After the sea peoples arrived, a series of powerful Eastern Mediterranean civilizations collapsed beyond recovery. Cities were burned to the ground, international trade networks were destroyed, technology was lost, and society fell into a dark age that lasted for hundreds of years. Only Egypt, thanks to its military organization and natural geography, managed to stand firm, though it suffered heavy losses. The mysterious disappearance of the sea peoples has left a historical void that remains unfilled. Some groups, such as the Philistines, may be remnants of the sea peoples continuing to exist in Canaan, but most of the others disappeared without a trace. There is no mass grave, no ancient city, no original legend recording their origins or their fate. It is precisely the uncertain identity that has made the sea peoples an immortal legend for archaeologists and historians. Three major questions continue to haunt modern scholars. Who were the sea peoples really? Were they a real people, or merely a collective name for a series of wartime coalitions? Where was the homeland of the sea peoples? No archaeological site has confirmed their origin. Even the names in ancient documents are inconsistent or have changed over time. What were their true motivations? Were they simply invaders, or were they victims of global catastrophes forced to rise up for survival? No historical record gives a clear answer. Archaeological studies have found only burnt layers of debris, ruined cities, and some unattributed weapons. Each generation of historians produces new theories, from the chain collapse of ancient economies and climate-driven migrations to the idea that they were peoples from outside the Mediterranean who attacked the great civilizations and then vanished forever. Whether destroyers or victims of the era, the sea peoples played a major role in shaping the world after the Bronze Age. The collapse of great empires paved the way for small kingdoms to grow, and new cultures such as the Hebrews, Phoenicians, and ancient Greeks emerged more strongly in the power vacuum. The shadow of the sea people's nameless homeland left an indelible mark on the map of humanity's development. What makes the sea peoples most mysterious is not just their destructive power, but their complete absence from history. No one claims to be their descendants. There are no original legends, and no archaeological site confirms their origins. All that remains are the records written by their enemies and traces of destruction. This absolute disappearance has turned the sea peoples into a symbol of the mysteries that history has never been able to solve, a reminder that there will always be ghosts of the past waiting to be discovered or forever forgotten. If you ever have the chance to visit the northern coastline of New Zealand's South Island, you simply cannot miss one of the most unique natural symbols here, Split Apple Rock. This boulder sits quietly on the water in Tasman Bay near Abel Tasman National Park and seems to have existed for millions of years, just to leave those who witness it awestruck, wondering what created such a perfectly split stone apple. What do you think really caused the perfect split in split apple rock? Was it just a natural phenomenon, or could there be another hidden mystery? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Split apple rock, or Tokangawa in Maori, stands out on the deep blue sea with a shape nearly identical to a giant granite apple that's been sliced cleanly into two halves by a razor-sharp cut. Its size is anything but small, about 6 meters in diameter and weighing hundreds of tons. The two halves sit side by side, slightly apart, making it easy for anyone to imagine a half-split apple, a natural scene so strange that if you hadn't seen it, you'd think it belonged in fantasy or a sci-fi documentary. The perfection, balance, and sharpness of the split have made split apple rock a subject of geological research, as well as a never-ending source of inspiration for photographers, artists, tourists, and local people. How could a massive granite boulder, renowned for its hardness and durability, be split into two perfectly even, neat halves, showing no signs of the random breakage usually seen in natural rock fractures? According to many geologists, split apple rock is the product of a physical weathering process that has lasted tens of thousands to millions of years. Rainwater, especially salty seawater, seeps into tiny cracks on the granite's surface. As temperatures change, this water can freeze during ice ages or particularly cold periods. When frozen, its volume increases, exerting expansive force like invisible wedges. With each winter, this pressure grows a bit more gradually, widening the cracks over many millennia. Eventually, the stress reaches the rock's limit, and in an instant, the boulder splits into two parts. Yet the almost absolute perfection of the split at split apple rock continues to puzzle experts. In nature, even when physical weathering occurs, cracks are often uneven, jagged, or result in many fragments, rather than a clean, tidy divide. Split apple rock is a special case, producing two halves so symmetrically that it's hard to believe without any secondary cracks or large debris scattered around. Some scientists suggest that the crystalline structure of this particular granite, combined with inherent factors like microcracks formed during the Earth's crust formation, determine the direction of the split. If the microcracks occurred in just the right spots, combined with the influence of wind, temperature, humidity, and tides, this strange split could have happened without the usual chaotic fragmentation. Notably, split apple rock's location, half submerged, half above the seawater, means it is constantly subjected to waves, saltwater sea winds, daily temperature swings, and even biological factors like plant roots, barnacles, and microorganisms clinging to the rock. All of these, though seemingly minor, accumulate over thousands of years and can serve as natural saws, quietly slicing the huge stone in a slow, steady, and uncannily precise manner. Beyond scientific explanations, many mysterious theories have emerged around the creation of this perfect split. Some believe split apple rock was divided by the impact of a small meteorite or by rare geological events like powerful earthquakes, though there's no clear geological evidence to support these ideas. In Maori legend, many say gods or supernatural forces intervened to create the stone apple, viewing it as a sacred mark or symbol from ancient times, a message from the deities to future generations. Some New Age followers even believe the perfect split is a sign of Earth's energy lines, or that energy flows converge at split apple rock, turning it into a special sacred site where one can feel this energy simply by touching the stone. Despite decades of research, split apple rock still keeps its secret about the formation of its perfect fracture. No simulation or experiment has ever recreated such a sharp, symmetrical cut in such a large granite boulder using only ordinary natural processes. This is precisely what has made Split Apple Rock a symbol not only of natural beauty, but also a challenge to human understanding of geological processes. Mystery enthusiasts and travelers from all over the world visit this site to experience it for themselves. Is this merely a random product of time, or does it still hide a secret that science has yet to unravel? Not only does Split Apple Rock stand out in form, it has become a magnet for photographers, artists, and international tourists. At different times of day, sunrise, sunset, or on clear days, sunlight shining on the fracture creates spectacular optical effects, making the rock glow or stand out against the sky and water. When the tide rises and falls, the rock presents new views, evoking the image of an apple floating in the vast ocean. Many believe that touching Split Apple Rock brings luck or allows you to feel the ancient energy radiating from this stone that has existed for millions of years. Whether you are a scientist, photographer, cultural researcher, or simply someone who loves nature's mysteries, Split Apple Rock can offer powerful inspiration. It's a reminder of the power of time, of how tiny processes like drops of water, wind, climate change roots can combine, persist, and silently create wonders that humans cannot imagine. Split Apple Rock is a perfect symbol for the idea that the greatest marvels often don't come from sudden strength, but are the result of millions of years of steady change, sometimes a miraculous coincidence of nature that we can hardly reproduce with modern technology. It can be said that Split Apple Rock is a mirror reflecting science's humility before nature. Even with today's 3D scanners, fracture analysis techniques, and physical modeling using supercomputers, no one has yet fully explained why a granite boulder would choose to split so perfectly at just the right place, at just the right time, and leave its mark for millions of years. That is why Split Apple Rock is not just a tourist attraction, but an endless source of inspiration for those eager to explore the universe's mysteries, a place where these stone apples are still waiting to be deciphered, like a grand secret creation left to humanity. Amidst the flooded plains of southern Vietnam more than 2,000 years ago, an enormous canal system once existed and flourished, connecting dozens of ancient cities, settlements, and bustling trade centers of the Ok Ao Funan civilization. What remains today, even though much has been buried under layers of silt and reshaped by millennia of change, is enough to astonish the international archaeological community. What makes the Ok Ao Canal network surpass all contemporary structures, even those in renowned civilizations like Mesopotamia or India, is the enduring mystery of its construction technology. How were they able to excavate, plan, and maintain a vast, perfectly straight network of canals stretching across waterlogged deltas with such breathtaking accuracy? In your opinion, what was the real secret behind the ancient engineers' ability to build such straight and precise canals? Share your own theories or thoughts about how the Ok Ao people planned and built these super canals in the comments below. With hundreds of kilometers of canals, some as wide as 40 meters and as deep as 2 to 5 meters, the Ok Ao Canal network forms a living map of commerce, irrigation, and community life. From the OCEO's center, major canals radiate outward like the spokes of a wheel, linking cities, docks, workshops, and agricultural areas. Even more importantly, many main canals have been found to extend straight toward river mouths and large seaports, opening corridors to the Gulf of Thailand and the Indian Ocean. This network not only served irrigation and flood control, but was also a highway for transporting goods, the economic lifeblood of the entire civilization. Today, when scientists use satellite imagery, LiDAR, and field archaeology to track the buried stretches of these canals, they notice a strange phenomenon. Most of the canals run perfectly straight, not winding with the natural terrain, as if someone drew them with a ruler across the delta. At some locations, canals intersect at almost exact right angles, forming grid-like zones, something extremely rare in ancient civilizations where surveying and determining direction was nearly impossible without modern technology. With today's technology, people must use GPS devices, theodolites, and lasers to survey and excavate perfectly straight canals across waterlogged deltas. Yet the Oki-Eo people did this 2,000 years ago with what exactly? That's a question that has never been satisfactorily answered. When researchers examined prominent canal sections, such as Takiet Nangmao and Seo Quit, they discovered that from the starting point to the end, even over stretches of dozens of kilometers, the directional error was only a few meters, an accuracy equivalent to standards in modern engineering works from the early 20th century. This raises a host of profound mysteries. How could ancient inhabitants possibly survey and maintain such long canals in perfect straightness, especially given that the flooded terrain of the southwestern delta made it extremely difficult to determine direction by sight, alone made even more challenging when visibility was blocked by dense forests, fog, or water covering the land year-round. If they used only wooden stakes, ropes, or simple ground markers, could they truly ensure a perfectly straight path for tens of kilometers and still create intersections at such precise right angles with other canals? Some scholars suggest that the Oki-Eo Canal network bears traces of astronomical knowledge. Many of the major canals run exactly along east-west or north-south axes, or coincide with the direction of the sunrise and sunset on special days such as the summer and winter solstices. Is it possible that the Oki-Eo people used tools based on the position of the sun, the stars, or primitive observational devices to align their canal digging, enabling them to achieve such extraordinary precision? Another question concerns how they organized labor for construction. Excavating a straight canal, stretching dozens of kilometers, would require mobilizing thousands of people working simultaneously with highly sophisticated methods for communication and coordination. Without modern maps, zoning diagrams, or progress monitoring tools, errors would inevitably accumulate with each segment. And yet, in reality, the Oki-Eo canals have managed to retain their remarkable neatness and precision up to the present day. Some researchers believe that the orientation of the major canals at Oki-Eo often aligns in remarkable ways with natural phenomena, such as matching the direction of the monsoon winds or natural water currents, or being based on natural landmarks like mountain peaks, sandbanks, and major riverbanks to determine the route of the canal. At the same time, it is possible that they used the shadow of the sun, bamboo stalks, or pillars to find direction and take measurements over time. Although no specific artifacts have been found, many theories suggest that the Oki-Eo inhabitants used survey stakes, large wooden poles driven along the intended canal line, combined with ropes or even smoke and fire signals at night to maintain a straight path. This method, while seemingly simple, would have required patience and continuous checking for errors, especially in environments with rising and falling water mud or thick grass obstructing the view. In addition, certain patterns on bas-reliefs or pottery, such as semicircular rulers and angle markers, are considered hints of primitive measuring tools used to determine direction or check right angles, ensuring the accuracy of the canal grid system. Furthermore, some scholars hypothesize that the Oki-Io people may have recorded canal routes, intersections, or special locations on clay maps or wooden boards, or passed down their expertise orally through generations of craftsmen and village leaders. But so far, no definitive maps or documentation have been found to confirm these theories. Unlike most ancient canal systems around the world, which tend to meander gently along rivers, streams, or follow the natural terrain, the Oki-Io canals often cut straight across the plains, seemingly unaffected by geography, dividing the land into a regular grid, reminiscent of a checkerboard, an approach that reflects a modern planning mindset focused on straight lines and right angles. This method not only optimized the land area for irrigation, but also created ideal conditions for water transport and enabled effective control over vast territories. Notably, many canal intersections developed into major centers of ancient urban life, where trade harbors, temples, and even religious ceremonies converged, demonstrating an urban philosophy that made canals the axes and towns, the hubs serving production, transportation, social organization, and community belief systems all at once. Modern surveys further underscore the sophistication of this network, despite thousands of years of geological change, flooding, and sedimentation. Many canal stretches, when measured against standard axes, show deviations of only a few meters, even over lengths of 20 to 30 kilometers. They have retained near-perfect accuracy, an achievement that astonishes even modern engineers today. The mystery of the construction techniques and the remarkably precise surveying ability of the Oki-Io canal network clearly reflects a civilization with an exceptional level of labor organization, where thousands of workers were mobilized and coordinated seamlessly across villages, craftsmen, and leaders, all adhering to strict management and control methods to ensure both progress and the quality of the works. At the same time, this canal system stands as evidence that the Oki-Io people possessed knowledge far ahead of their time in mathematics, astronomy, and hydraulics, enabling them to maintain straight alignments, accurately determine elevations, manage water flow efficiently and effectively, control flooding across the vast delta. Beyond that, the sustainability and environmental adaptability of the Oki-Io canal system are demonstrated through its role as an intelligent ecological solution, protecting land from saltwater intrusion, retaining water during the dry season, and helping to drain floods in the rainy season, thus contributing to the stability and development of agriculture, the economy, and community life for centuries. To this day, a multitude of unanswered questions still surround the remarkable achievements of the Oki-Io canal network, leaving researchers deeply intrigued. Could there still be tools, ancient maps, or documents hidden beneath the layers of silt in this delta region, artifacts that might reveal more of the technical secrets behind the surveying and construction methods of the ancients? Did a now lost secret surveying system ever exist, something akin to the mysterious techniques that once enabled the Egyptians to build the pyramids or the Romans to construct the Colosseum, yet remain unsolved by humanity even now? These mysteries may also be closely intertwined with elements of religion, astronomy, or local legends, where those who took on the task of surveying and building the canals were revered as shamans, priests, or individuals with special knowledge within their communities. Ultimately, the question remains whether these extraordinary technical accomplishments were the result of technological and intellectual exchanges with other great civilizations, such as India, China, or Rome, or if they were, in fact, the wholly independent and indigenous inventions of the Oki-Io people themselves. Although most of the Oki-Io canal system is now buried, the remaining traces irrefutably testify to a level of technical prowess, organization, and surveying thought far ahead of its time. It laid the foundation for many subsequent irrigation and waterway transport techniques in the Mekong Delta and remains an endless source of inspiration for Vietnamese archaeology and technical history. The Oc Eo Canal network is not merely a relic, it is a grand puzzle of humanity. How did people living in a watery delta with primitive tools manage to construct and survey with such precision? The mysteries of Oc Eo's construction and surveying technology still await answers from modern scientists, and perhaps beneath the quiet earth of southern Vietnam, even greater secrets remain yet to be revealed. In the wild and harsh land of the Yukok Plateau in Siberia, beneath layers of eternal ice that have lasted for thousands of years, archaeologists have discovered one of the most important and mysterious archaeological sites of the modern era: the mummy of a woman belonging to the Pazyryk culture, famously known as the Siberian Ice Maiden Princess of Yukok. The findings within this tomb, from clothing tattoos and grave goods to traces of burial rituals, not only provide deep insights into the life of the Pazyryk people, but also pose countless unanswered questions about the true identity and strange death of this figure. Who do you think the Siberian Ice Maiden really was? In your opinion, is the greatest mystery her clothing, her tattoos, or the cause of her death? Share your thoughts in the comments below. When the Ice Maiden was excavated in the summer of 1993, the world was astonished by the extraordinary integrity of the mummy. The first thing that amazed scientists was the outfit she wore: a crimson wool skirt, a thick fur cloak, a belt felt-lined leather boots, and especially a tall hat adorned with feathers, decorated with intricate patterns that only the aristocracy or high-ranking religious figures were entitled to possess. The accessories found beside her painted a clearer picture of Pazyryk society: a carved wooden comb, a wooden box for herbal medicine jewelry crafted from semi-precious stones, a small bronze mirror. All of these show a level of craftsmanship and artistry far above the ordinary, reflecting both the wealth and the special role of this woman in her community. Additionally, the coffin made from a large tree trunk, meticulously carved, along with a chariot, and the remains of a horse buried with her further prove the respect and power she once held. On the skin of the Ice Maiden, especially on her arm and left shoulder, scientists found an ancient tattoo system of striking beauty. These were drawings of mythical animals like deer leopards and fantastical swirling creatures rich in symbolism. According to many experts, these tattoos are not merely decorative but reflect beliefs' worldview, and perhaps even the religious status or spiritual authority, possibly as a shaman of women in the Pazyryk community. This supports the hypothesis that the Ice Maiden was not just nobility, but a spiritual leader and mediator between humans and the divine. Inside the tomb, beyond personal items like combs, mirrors, and jewelry, there were many objects serving ritual purposes: a wooden box for herbal medicine, perhaps used for healing rituals or communicating with the spirit world, ceremonial daggers decorated with geometric or mythological animal motifs, and many pieces of carved wood brought vividly to life. These artifacts demonstrate the complexity of their belief system and suggest the Ice Maiden's crucial role in major tribal ceremonies. Of particular note, the burial of a chariot and a horse which had been sacrificed as part of the ritual is a detail reserved for only the most noble or the most powerful shamans. The combination of personal effects, ceremonial objects, and animal sacrifices painted the portrait of a complex sacred funeral, underlining the Ice Maiden's exceptional stature in ancient Pazyryk society. One reason the mummy and accompanying artifacts were so perfectly preserved is the permafrost conditions of the Yukok Plateau. After more than 2,400 years, The colors of the textiles, every hair strand, every tattoo, every piece of jewelry remain almost intact. However, removing the mummy from its ancient tomb sparked major controversy between scientists and the indigenous Altai community. Many believe that the Ice Maiden is the guardian of the land, and that her excavation brought about a curse, manifesting in a series of earthquakes and natural disasters afterwards. This element adds another layer of mystery to the story of the Ice Maiden and her legacy. What sets the Siberian Ice Maiden apart from all other ancient mummies is not just artistic value or preservation technique, but the fundamental questions surrounding her true identity and the cause of her death. First, regarding her identity, based on all the discovered artifacts, the Ice Maiden was certainly not an ordinary person. Aristocratic clothing, complex tattoos, special burial rituals all point to a high position in society. But was she a princess by blood, a powerful shaman, or a revered priestess? Scholars still debate this. Especially the mythical animal tattoos and ceremonial items lean toward the theory that she was a religious leader or shaman, a bridge between the earthly and spiritual realms. If so, the role of women in Pazyryk society may have been much more significant and mysterious than previously imagined. Second, regarding the cause of death, CT scans revealed the Ice Maiden died at a young age, about 25 years old, showing signs of severe illness, most likely breast cancer or a serious infection. But why wasn't someone of such power cured or saved? Some theorize that her death was not entirely natural, but connected to a sacrificial ritual, a voluntary departure from this world to ensure the tribe's prosperity or serve as a conduit to the gods during troubled times. The presence of ritual items, medicinal herbs, and the burial method, including both horses and a chariot, symbols of the journey to the afterlife, further highlights the possibility that the Ice Maiden's death was a major ceremonial event. Yet no surviving documents clarify this, making every artifact discovered shrouded in mystery. Third, regarding the mystery of Pazyryk society, was the Ice Maiden, a unique case. In reality, several other ancient tombs have been found in the Altai region with similar burial techniques, tattoos, and artifacts, but none match the complexity, refinement, and mystery of the Ice Maiden. This only strengthens her unique status while raising bigger questions about social structure, belief systems, and the concept of living goddesses in the ancient nomadic cultures of the Eurasian steppes. After being excavated and brought to major museums in Russia, the Siberian Ice Maiden became a subject of controversy not only in the scientific community, but also among indigenous people. The Altai have repeatedly demanded the mummy and artifacts be returned to Ukok, viewing it as a spiritual responsibility and respect for their ancestors. Documentaries and international academic conferences continue to explore the Ice Maiden's story as a symbol of the boundary between modern knowledge and spiritual mystery. Many scholars believe each artifact in the Ice Maiden's tomb is both a letter to posterity and a veil concealing secrets not yet solved about women's roles, the invisible power of shamans, and the true reason a young woman was sent off from this world with such elaborate ceremony. Even decades after her discovery, the artifacts of the Siberian Ice Maiden continue to inspire endless research in archaeology, anthropology, and even contemporary art. They do not just tell the story of one person, but open a door into the spiritual world, beliefs, and advanced techniques of ancestors from the cold Siberian steppes. Amid the misty countryside of Ireland, where history and legend intertwine, a strange granite stone has stood tall for thousands of years, the Turoe stone. Not a towering monument, nor a magnificent temple, just a small, unassuming pillar, yet one that holds within itself countless unsolved mysteries. As you approach, anyone would find themselves bewildered by the labyrinth of spirals, flowing lines, and abstract patterns covering its surface, the unmistakable marks of Latene art, left by ancient hands, like an encrypted code, challenging the future. As time passes, these layers of coding continue to spark curiosity and drive generation to explore and decipher the true wonders hidden within the Turoe stone. What do you think the patterns on the Turoe stone are truly hiding? Share your thoughts or theories in the comments below. Unlike many other relics of Ireland, where ancient stones or pillars usually hold mere architectural or ritual value, the Turoe stone possesses a unique voice thanks to its intricate carvings deeply imbued with the essence of Latene art, which marked the zenith of Celtic craftsmanship at the end of the Iron Age. The motifs on the stone do not follow basic geometric forms, but instead twist, intertwine, overlap, and blend between the real and the imaginary, creating dynamic visual effects reminiscent of waves, winds, or invisible streams of energy. These motifs are not merely decorative. They may also contain an entire coded system of knowledge, beliefs, and enigmatic messages that modern people can only read but never truly decode. The first thing that impresses anyone standing before the Turoe stone is the level of craftsmanship that seems to surpass its era. The large and small spirals, the smoothly flowing wavy lines, and the abstract plant motifs are all deeply and sharply carved, proving the mastery of ancient artisans. Some studies even suggest that this engraving technique would be extremely difficult to achieve, using only basic stone or crude metal tools, raising questions about the technological sophistication, tools, and secrets once possessed by the Celtic people. What makes the Turoe stone most outstanding is the hidden meaning behind its Latene artwork. Archaeologists, historians, and symbol experts have spent decades debating: are these motifs just decorative patterns, or do they form a coded system of knowledge, religious messages, or even a sacred language of the ancient Celts? Looking closely, the spirals, the dominant motif on the Turoe stone, appear densely and in various sizes, intertwined with wavy lines, sometimes broken, sometimes connected, forming clusters like mysterious code segments. Some scholars believe these spirals symbolize life cycles, the endless cycle of the universe, life, death, rebirth, or represent the sun, water, or other fundamental elements of the Celtic worldview. There are also theories that these motifs convey knowledge of time cycles, astronomy, or even ritual scripts used in sacred ceremonies. Notably, Latene art on the Turoe stone is not a script that can be read like written language, but is almost a visual language, profoundly symbolic and requiring an understanding of the worldview and beliefs of its creators. This is what puzzles modern researchers. No ancient records exist on how to read these motifs, nor the ceremonial context in which the Turoe stone was used. Some symbolists go further, suggesting that each cluster of spirals on the stone might be a code known only to tribal elders or druidic priests, like wordless books, encoding messages about mythology, history, magical arts, or philosophies of the community. This perspective is further reinforced when the Turoe stone is considered within the broader context of Celtic civilization. This was an era without a fixed written script, and all knowledge, legends, and rituals were preserved through oral tradition and symbolism. Therefore, Latene motifs on the stone could carry both personalized meanings tied to specific clans or chiefs and act as a collective knowledge vehicle, while also serving as a bridge between the physical world and the spiritual realm. Another intriguing theory posits that the Turoe stone might be a cosmic axis where the motifs are carved in a specific order to mimic the flow of energy or spirit, creating a sacred space that connects the living with their ancestors, deities, or supernatural forces. The mystery deepens when Latene motifs on the Turoe stone clearly resemble many renowned Latene sites across continental Europe, such as France, Switzerland, Germany, despite the great distances and no concrete evidence of trade during that era. This raises the question, was there once a shared visual language among the Celtic elite across Europe, or a network of wandering priests and artisans who spread symbolic knowledge between lands, or perhaps there was a layer of collective intelligence that is now lost, leaving only faint traces through stone artistry? The importance of Latene art in encoding messages on the Turoe stone is also reinforced by local folk legends. According to tales, the Turoe stone was not simply decorative but a wishing stone, where druids performed rituals to petition the gods, or a place that concentrated spiritual power to protect the villagers. Some legends even claim that anyone daring to move or destroy the stone would suffer a curse, be punished by the gods, or endure prolonged misfortune. Here, Latene motifs become talismans, sealing codes, helping to maintain the flow of sacred energy between the human world and the divine. Delving into Latene motifs on the Turoe stone, many modern researchers have also discovered calculations regarding space and time. The spirals are arranged in specific directions, potentially aligned with sunrise or sunset points. During the year, the positions of stars, or the seasonal markers of the calendar. If this theory is correct, the Turoe stone would not only be a ritual object, but also a visual astronomical calendar, enabling ancient Celts to determine times for agriculture festivals and important ceremonies throughout the year. However, evidence is still too limited to draw definitive conclusions, especially since moving the Turoe stone from its original location has erased many clues connecting it to the ancient landscape. Although many theories have been put forward to this day, the Turoe stone and the Latene artistry on it remain an undeciphered code. Each carved layer, every spiral, is like an open question, challenging generations of archaeologists, historians, and lovers of ancient mysteries. Is this a spiritual map of the Celts, an unwritten history book, or simply an unconscious masterpiece? We may never know for certain. The Turoe stone has transcended time and space to become an eternal symbol of the Celtic desire to encode and preserve knowledge. No matter how modern we become, we are still drawn to the unsolved mysteries that this stone represents. With its unique Latene artistry and mysterious coded layers, the Turoe stone is not only a cultural legacy, but also a reminder of creativity, spiritual depth, and faith in the enduring power of the mysteries of the past. Some of the greatest secrets are not found in massive structures, but are hidden within the smallest of objects. In the heart of ancient Mesopotamia, the Sumerians left behind a miniature legacy of immense power. The cylinder seals, tiny cylindrical artifacts that contain an entire world of complexity and wonder. Crafted over 5 millennia ago, each cylinder seal was far more than an administrative tool. It was a compact data vault encapsulating the essence of Sumerian civilization itself. While the Egyptian pyramids, or the stone statues of Easter Island, inspire awe with their size, the cylinder seals astonish scholars with their micro-scale sophistication, mysterious crafting technologies, and an ability to encode messages that defies modern imagination. Do you believe such small artifacts could hold lost knowledge or even change our understanding of ancient history? Let us know your theories in the comments. Imagine an object measuring only 2 to 5 centimeters in length, about 1 to 2 centimeters in diameter, smaller than a pocket lighter, even fitting neatly in the palm of your hand. Yet on this tiny surface, the Sumerians could carve out an entire world, from parading armies and mythological rituals to scenes of daily life, miniature wedge-shaped script, and even mysterious astronomical symbols. What makes these seals legendary in the archaeological world? First, let's talk about the materials used. Unlike contemporary civilizations, the Sumerians didn't just use baked clay, but also employed extremely hard, precious, and semi-precious stones, such as lapis lazuli, carnelian, chalcedony, serpentine hematite, and even obsidian. These are materials that, without modern machinery, would make detailed carving on a small curved surface nearly impossible. Yet somehow, Sumerian artisans produced thousands of cylinder seals so sharp and meticulous that modern experts have to use electron microscopes to uncover all their hidden details. Their crafting techniques, surpassed all imagination. Motifs are aligned with utmost precision, creating seamless patterns when rolled over wet clay, like printing or a continuous comic strip of ancient times. Every engraved line is not merely handiwork, but reflects a deep understanding of the material, hand pressure, cutting angles, and multi-layered depths, things that with only stone or primitive bronze tools would be nearly magical. Some seals even have motifs less than a millimeter wide with stable depth and clean, sharp lines, as if created by a microsurgical blade or some kind of micro-vibrational technology. Some archaeologists have found traces suggesting the use of bronze tools or even ultra-fine metal wires, yet so far, no specific artifact has been convincing enough. What stirs controversy is the consistent quality across thousands of cylinder seals spanning centuries, despite differences in artisans' workshops and material sources. How could the Sumerians transmit skills and maintain almost absolute craftsmanship standards in an age without modern measuring devices? Some theories propose that in addition to superb manual techniques, there may have been supporting tools like hand drills, standardized toolkits, or even now lost mechanical technologies. Of course, these remain hypotheses, only thickening the veil of mystery around these seals. If the craftsmanship alone is overwhelming, then the content depicted on each cylinder seal is even more astonishing. Imagine on a surface the size of half a fingernail a series of mythological scenes, battles, gods, hybrid creatures, ritual ceremonies, and even strange symbols, all projected as vividly as an ancient animated film. Not only objects confirming ownership or protecting goods, each seal is also a mini comic strip preserving mythological tales, historical events, and even knowledge never before revealed. Many seals show bizarre, hybrid beings, human bird, human fish sphinxes, floating objects, or unidentified astronomical symbols, fueling endless debates about the hidden wisdom of the Sumerian civilization. Some cylinder seals still contain symbols that experts have yet to decipher, raising a big question. Are they mere decoration, or do they hide codes, scientific knowledge, or spiritual messages known only to the elite? Many researchers believe that cylinder seals weren't just used for administration and economics, but were also keys for religious rituals, magic, and communication with the divine. Certain images regularly appear, such as the divine hand, large eyes, star shapes, the moon, the sun, all subtly hinting at a system of astronomical, mathematical, and calendrical knowledge the Sumerians possessed thousands of years ago. Precisely because of these factors, cylinder seals have become objects of extraordinary hypotheses. Some fringe theories claim that the repeated appearances of bird-headed figures, flying objects, or highly accurate astronomical depictions are evidence of secret cosmic knowledge, even intervention from extraterrestrial civilizations. Most serious scholars, however, focus on unraveling the manufacturing process, which remains a big question. What tools, what techniques, how was the craft passed on and maintained over centuries? If only stone knives were used, even the sharpest, how could they carve lines as fine as 0.2 to 0.3 millimeters on gemstones without cracking or breaking? The harmonious coordination between artisan skills and the ability to draw in reverse, having to envision the final image as it would appear, when rolled out, is also a complex puzzle of spatial thinking. Some cylinder seals bear images and symbols that completely mismatch traditional archaeological knowledge, such as scenes of two creatures flying around a large circle, which some researchers interpret as an eclipse or rare astronomical phenomenon. Constellations unknown to other civilizations until much later, or communications between gods and humans portrayed in ways never before seen in neighboring cultures. Are these just artistic imagination or traces of secrets no one has yet imagined? Not stopping at technology and imagery, cylinder seals are also time machines that preserve the earliest cuneiform characters, the foundation of the world's first written language. On these tiny rings, wedge-shaped lines are neatly arranged, conveying everything from names and titles to spells, oaths, and even encoded economic or legal data. Notably, some seals have special symbols that experts suspect are private codes or records of knowledge accessible only to the priestly or aristocratic class. This is also a vast data source that allows researchers to reconstruct the history, economy, society, and religion of Sumer, but simultaneously raises questions. Are cylinder seals mobile knowledge vaults where the elite's essence is encrypted and passed down only to chosen heirs? One strange point is that not everyone owned a cylinder seal. Those discovered are mainly linked to nobles, officials, and priests, many bearing the ultimate symbols of power, crowns, supreme deities' totems. This leads researchers to believe that cylinder seals were not merely administrative tools, but talismans, sacred amulets, even tickets to the world of the gods. Some seals were buried with the dead, placed in temples, or used in secret rituals that to this day remain unexplained. Although crafted thousands of years ago, many cylinder seals remain sharp and almost intact, demonstrating not only manufacturing prowess, but also knowledge of selecting treating materials and Sumerian preservation secrets. Thanks to this, we today can still read stories, symbols, and even hidden messages that our ancestors wished to send to later generations. Sumerian cylinder seals, these tiny artifacts embody the intellect, artistry, and mysteries of the Sumerians. They are not just signatures or seals of approval, but showcase advanced microcrafting technology containing a treasury of knowledge and the spiritual power of an entire civilization. Each cylinder seal is a unique piece of history, and their mysterious sophistication will forever challenge modern humanity to seek answers about the past. Hidden amidst the vast, semi-arid steppes of southern Kazakhstan, not far from today's border with Kyrgyzstan, the Akitus megalithic complex is not just an ordinary ancient ruin, it is a symbol of mysteries that have never been solved regarding the knowledge and construction abilities of ancient civilizations in Central Asia. Some have called this place the Stonehenge of Kazakhstan, but in reality, the scale and complexity of Akitus have left modern archaeologists and engineers astonished, raising profound questions about the surveying skills, architecture, and labor organization of the people who built it thousands of years ago. What do you think is the biggest mystery about Akitus? Do you believe ancient people could really build such a complex with their technology back then? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Spread over more than 3 hectares, Akitus appears as a complex of fortification walls, foundations, underground chambers, courtyards, and corridors interwoven like a massive maze. The main walls of the site stretch nearly 200 meters long, with remaining sections rising several meters high, assembled from hundreds of thousands of giant red sandstone blocks, many weighing from 3 to 50 tons each. What is astonishing is that these blocks are not native to the area. They were transported from quarries dozens of kilometers away, crossing challenging terrains and rolling hills, a feat that tested both human strength and organizational intellect. The overall layout of Akitus is strikingly different from any other ancient structure in the Eurasian steppes. Unlike traditional symmetrical forms, Akitus's walls and corridors are arranged in irregular, non-linear shapes with countless sudden turns, deep underground chambers, vast open courtyards, and stairs leading up to high platforms of indeterminate use. This has led researchers to speculate about a unique design, perhaps serving ritual defensive or astronomical purposes that remain unexplained today. While many historical sources claim Akitus was built around the 7th to 9th centuries, associated with the Turkic Sogdian or even early Byzantine or Arab dynasties, the deep foundations and archaeological evidence suggest the site may be much older. Some scholars propose Akitus may have existed since the Neolithic era, or is the legacy of a prehistoric civilization that has vanished from written history. What makes the debate even more mysterious is that no one knows the exact purpose of Akitus. Some theories suggest it was a fortress, others believe it was a royal palace, a monastery, a temple, or a ceremonial center. Some even propose it was an important stop on the ancient Silk Road. Each model has its basis, but none is convincing enough when compared with all of Akitus's architectural features, location scale, and the bizarre manner of its construction. On field surveys, scientists are overwhelmed by Akitus's non-traditional arrangement: underground rooms built deep into the earth, staircases leading up to altar-like stone platforms, wells connecting to natural underground water systems. Notably, some large gates and wall holes appear to be aligned with astronomical phenomena, such as the positions of sunrise and sunset during solstices, mirroring other ancient observatories around the world. Additionally, the open courtyards, curving or L-shaped walls, and unusually winding corridors suggest a comprehensive design with clear intent, not randomly added or expanded over time, as seen in most other ancient sites. What makes Akitus so haunting for researchers around the world is the mystery of its incredibly precise construction and surveying technology. How could ancient people move, cut, and assemble hundreds of thousands of massive stone blocks with such high accuracy, especially when the quarries were located dozens of kilometers away? The transportation of these red sandstone blocks, each weighing tens of tons across long distances and rugged terrain, remains an unanswered question. There is no evidence of large wheels-draft animals or primitive rail systems around Akitus, which rules out the use of traditional methods like those in ancient Egypt. If only human labor was used, it would have required thousands of workers and highly scientific organization. Even more astonishing is the near-perfect fit between the stone blocks. Many of the main walls were assembled without mortar, and in some places, not even a thin sheet of paper could fit between the gaps. Certain sections achieve almost perfect right angles with smooth surfaces and perfectly straight edges, indicating signs of highly advanced surveying technology. Experts who have analyzed the stone cuts have found traces distinct from those made by ordinary metal tools. Some theories suggest that ancient builders may have used secret alloys or fire-water thermal shock methods to split the stone into large, flat slabs, but there is currently no clear evidence to confirm this. Another surprising discovery is the spatial precision in the orientation of Akitus's main structures. Many large gates, staircases, and corridors are aligned with significant astronomical events, such as the winter and summer solstices, or the positions of bright stars at certain times of the year. This suggests that Akitus might have served as a large-scale astronomical observatory or a site for rituals related to the cycles of the sun-moon and constellations in ancient beliefs. Archaeologists have also found evidence of comprehensive master planning. The entire layout follows a system of longitudinal and latitudinal axes, dividing the complex into distinct functional areas, while underground water channels were routed through key points for daily life rituals or defense. All of this was based on extremely precise measurements, nearly impossible to achieve with mere manual experience. Moreover, Akitus boasts a mysterious hydraulic and underground system with a network of wells, deep pits, and corridors directly connected to the region's natural groundwater. These watercourses were routed in a hydraulically logical way, optimizing water resources while avoiding flooding, something that requires geological, hydrological, and engineering knowledge far beyond the ancient standard. Notably, many scholars comparing Akitus with sites like Baalbek in Lebanon, Sacsayhuaman in Peru, or the Egyptian pyramids have noted striking similarities in stone-cutting techniques, the precision of assembly, and pre-planned layouts. However, nowhere has the actual technology used by ancient builders been explained, making Akitus one of the Bermuda Triangles of megalithic archaeology, standing alongside the world's greatest unsolved mysteries. Another great mystery of Akitus is that the complex appears to be perpetually unfinished. Many walls are only partially built, massive stones left scattered with no evidence of roofs or finishing materials. What caused this grand project to suddenly halt? Some suggest war, natural disaster, or even a supernatural event forced all the builders to abandon it, leaving Akitus a ghost city as it is today. Local folklore speaks of the curse of Akitus. Anyone who tries to complete this structure will meet misfortune. Other legends tell of a red city where ancient shamans summoned powers from the earth and sky only to be buried forever under the sands of time when that power spiraled out of control. Today, Akitus remains a subject of major debate among archaeologists and engineers. Although many research teams have used modern equipment to explore the construction secrets of Akitus, the ultra-precise stone assembly and surveying techniques here are still a mystery. This raises the question, do we truly understand the creative abilities of our ancestors, or have we only scratched the surface of a glorious past? Akitus is not only a heritage of Kazakhstan, but also a reminder that the world still holds countless ancient mysteries unsolved, and that humanity's achievements may far surpass anything we have ever imagined. Across the lonely basalt ridges of Kazakhstan, in a landscape that seems ruled only by wind and sand, lies a sight that has astonished the world, Tamgali. Hidden within this rugged terrain are thousands of ancient rock carvings, among which the most striking are human figures crowned with radiant sun-like heads. Far more than symbols of mystical belief, these sun-head figures reveal an advanced level of stone craftsmanship, astronomical measurement, and compositional design far beyond their time. After thousands of years, the true purpose, meaning, and techniques behind these carvings remain a profound mystery, continuing to challenge archaeologists and modern science alike. What do you think these sun-head figures really meant to the ancient people of Tamgali? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Tamgali, or Tamgali Taz, meaning place of signs/symbols, is located in the Chu-Ili semi-desert region on sheer basalt cliffs and dry valleys. Since ancient times, it has become an open-air museum where the ancient people left on stone what they believed, revered, feared, and yearned for about the universe. From wild animals, hunting scenes, and rituals to supernatural symbols, everything was carved with such meticulousness and creativity that even modern archaeologists are amazed. Among them, the sunhead figures' human forms with sunburst halos stand as the greatest mystery. These figures are completely unique to Tamgali and are rarely found elsewhere in the region from the same era. The sunhead figures are carved with large, round heads surrounded by evenly radiating rays like the sun. Some figures have horns, geometric patterns, or strange symbols combined with stick-like or stylized bodies. Some carvings show a single large sun head surrounded by animals kneeling, while other groups show 2 to 3 sun heads together in ritual scenes, exuding a sense of power and the supernatural. Many scholars believe they represent sun deities, ancestral spirits, or shamans with the ability to communicate with the spirit world. The sunhead figures often appear in extremely special places, high cliffs difficult to reach, or shrine areas set apart from daily life. Notably, many are positioned so that when the sun rises or sets on important days of the year, like the summer or winter solstice, light will shine directly on the sunhead or the whole relief, as if activating the deity. This shows that the Tamgali people had knowledge of astronomy, could measure shadows, and may have built an entire ritual calendar system based on the movement of celestial bodies. This combination of art, religion, and astronomy not only reflects deep spiritual beliefs, but also indicates a high level of technical and mathematical skill. At this very point, Tamgali presents one of the greatest enigmas in Central Asian archaeology. How could ancient people, equipped only with primitive tools, create rock carvings that are deep, sharp, and harmoniously composed, while also achieving extremely precise astronomical alignments, all without leaving behind any textual records or technical diagrams? The basalt at Tamgali is inherently hard and durable, resistant to erosion over time, yet the carvings here display uniform depth, crisp lines, and no cracks, indicating that the ancients mastered advanced techniques in chiseling and engraving with copper or hard stone tools, and may have even combined these with heating methods to fracture the surface before proceeding with meticulous carving. Some traces suggest that in addition to stone hammers or copper chisels, they may have used sand abrasives or natural chemicals to temporarily soften the stone's surface before engraving, thereby producing smooth, consistent curves, an extremely rare achievement among contemporary sites. Even after thousands of years, many sunhead carvings still retain their original depth, showing almost no signs of wear, which suggests a very high level of expertise in selecting the stone, preparing the surface, and preserving the engraved layer. This leads some specialists to wonder, did the people of Tamgali possess secret preservation techniques or use some lost materials? Tamgali's mysteries extend beyond craftsmanship, encompassing astronomical knowledge ingeniously woven into art. The sunhead figures rarely appear at random. Instead, they are typically placed in positions calculated with great care regarding the sunrise, sunset, and seasonal transitions, so that sunlight would strike them precisely during important ritual times of the year. Numerous modern studies using astronomical simulation software have shown that during the solstices or equinoxes, the rays of the rising sun shine directly into the eyes or halos of the sunheads, creating an almost supernatural effect, as if the sun god were revived. This suggests that the ancients closely observed natural cycles using shadow sticks, measuring rods, or primitive stone columns to determine directions with remarkable accuracy. Additionally, clusters of sunhead figures demonstrate a close relationship between art and mathematics, as they are typically symmetrically composed, evenly spaced, and harmoniously proportioned within the overall relief, as if some mysterious standard of measurement ensured consistency throughout the complex, even though the individual figures vary greatly in size from several dozen centimeters up to nearly 2 meters. Most remarkably, the entire Tamgali site lacks any records, inscriptions, or technical diagrams detailing their methods of craftsmanship and measurement. Knowledge seems to have been passed down orally, guarded by shamans or skilled artisans, with much of it lost over time. Some theories even suggest that the Tamgali people could harness topography, magnetic fields, or the acoustics of the rocks to select sacred sites before carving, similar to how other civilizations searched for dragon veins before constructing temples, though there is no material evidence for this idea to date. The refinement and precision of Tamgali's techniques even inspired many other sites in Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and Siberia, where imitations of the sunhead carvings appear, but nowhere else has matched the sophistication, grandeur, and astronomical harmony achieved at Tamgali. Besides the technical aspects, the true origins and purpose of the sunhead figures have always been a subject of controversy. Numerous archaeological findings indicate that the inhabitants of Tamgali worshipped the sun deity, considering it the protective spirit of crops, livestock, and life itself. The selection of locations, as well as the alignment of light for the sunhead carvings, further reinforce the sacred role of this symbol within the community's beliefs. Some opinions suggest that the sunhead images are actually portraits of shamans wearing sun hats, individuals responsible for conducting trance rituals, communicating with the spiritual realm to pray for abundant harvests or to ward off disease for the villagers. There are clusters of sunheads of enormous size carved in the center of stone plazas, the gathering places for the entire tribe, serving as a declaration that the power of the deities or the tribal elders is intrinsically tied to the cosmic order, which cannot be overturned. Additionally, there are non-scientific theories proposing that the sunhead figures are the way ancient people recorded memories of encounters with extraterrestrial beings, linking them to the large-headed, big-eyed figures found in other ancient civilizations worldwide. However, this theory is not accepted by mainstream archaeologists. Currently, Tamgali has been recognized by UNESCO as a World Heritage Site, becoming a precious living archive of the beliefs, art, and technical achievements of ancient people. However, behind those magnificent rock carvings remain countless unsolved mysteries. Beneath layers of earth and the dust of time, archaeologists believe there are still hundreds or even thousands of carvings yet to be discovered, each new find potentially offering important clues about ancient craftsmanship, ritual meanings, and the spiritual life of the people who once lived there. One of the greatest challenges today is how to preserve, reconstruct, and accurately decode the stone carving and astronomical measurement techniques once used by the people of Tamgali, a task that requires the combination of many fields from archaeology and art to modern technology, while also opening up numerous opportunities for future generations of researchers to continue the journey of unraveling this remarkable heritage. The Tamgali sunhead figures are not just works of art. They also conceal mysteries of lost craftsmanship and astronomical knowledge. The intricate stone carvings, harmonious compositions, and precise alignments with celestial events make us wonder, did ancient people possess technical secrets we have yet to uncover? Behind each radiant circle may lie a message about the connection between humanity, the universe, and the divine, a mystery that will continue to challenge human curiosity for generations to come. Imagine walking through Mpumalanga in South Africa and seeing only low broken walls, stone rings here, a curved enclosure there, nothing that screams civilization. But the moment the camera rises, the ground turns into a diagram, thousands of circles stitched together by long double-lined stone corridors with terraced fields stepping down hillsides for kilometers. What people casually call the Bakoni stone circles are better understood as part of the wider Bakoni stone-walled landscape, a regional footprint so large that it can't be read from ground level. South African History Online describes Bakoni remains as a vast system of stone circles, passages, settlements, and agricultural works stretching across Mpumalanga, often summarized at the scale of roughly 10,000 square kilometers, more like a built agricultural district than a single mystery monument. The first mystery is therefore not what one ring means, but why an entire society chose to write its daily life, homes cattle management movement routes, and farming into stone across an escarpment. Unlike Stonehenge, where the enigma concentrates in one ceremonial core, Bakoni's puzzle is distributed. The monument is the landscape itself. A second mystery is function, because the circles are not isolated and random. Many are interpreted as homesteads and cattle kraals, yet they are repeatedly connected by walled pathways that look deliberately engineered like traffic lanes for people and livestock. A major synthesis of Mpumalanga stone-walled sites notes how aerial mapping revealed the regional distribution and how researchers described stone-walled roads and corridors linking settlement units, implying planned movement rather than ad hoc fencing. That raises an unsettling question. If these were only kraals, why invest labor in long stone-built routes? And why do some appear as paired lines that guide motion like channels? The third and arguably biggest mystery is agriculture, because the terraces beside and between the circles quietly change the story from ruins to technology. Peer-reviewed work on Bakoni terracing, Journal of African Archaeology, argues for a typology of agrarian stone features and reports exploratory excavation aimed at understanding how these terraces were built and used, showing the system was not merely defensive walls, but part of a managed farming landscape. In that study, phytolith analysis, microscopic silica traces left by plants, is discussed as evidence that can point to what was grown. The author's note signals consistent with maize in sampled terrace contexts, while also warning that such results are preliminary and must be strengthened with broader sampling and complementary methods. That single detail matters, because it anchors the stonework to food production. Terraces are not decorative. They are investment maintenance, soil control, water control, and risk management. And here, Bakoni becomes comparable to other rare landscape civilizations. The terraced zones of Nyanga in eastern Zimbabwe are often invoked as a regional parallel, and on a global stage, the closest conceptual cousins are not megalithic circles, but intensive terrace societies, parts of the Andes, parts of Ethiopia, parts of Asia, where entire slopes were transformed into productive infrastructure. The difference is that Bakoni sits in southern Africa, where this scale of visible built terracing is unusual enough that some scholars describe it as the largest known terraced settlement system on the continent, extending along the eastern escarpment for about 150 kilometers, flourishing from around 1500 into the 1820s before largely vanishing from view. That leads to the fourth mystery: how could something so extensive be missed or underestimated for so long? The answer is partly methodological and partly historical. Early researchers saw stone walls in the first half of the 20th century, but the landscape only began to make sense when scholars treated it as a regional phenomenon and used aerial perspectives. The Mpumalanga synthesis notes that E.C.N. van Hoopen is often credited with a major early architectural investigation in 1939. But the real shift came when Revel Mason used aerial photographs to map stone-walled distributions. In the region he studied, he identified 1,792 stone-walled sites, an explosive number that transformed scattered ruins into a system. Later aerial surveys and comparative work built on that foundation, but the ancient mystery remains because mapping reveals scale without automatically revealing governance. Were these loosely coordinated communities copying a successful template or a more integrated political economy, coordinating labor cattle movement and farming zones across valleys? Some modern interpretations emphasize that identity in the region cannot be reduced to a single label. Pottery style is not a tribe, walls are not an ethnicity, and that Bokoni should be thought of as a shifting social and political entity with changing strategies over time. The fifth mystery is encoded in Placement South African History online notes that Bokoni communities sometimes positioned themselves on hills and defensible points, implying pressure from conflict and raiding. Stone walls can therefore be read not only as farming and household architecture, but also as responses to insecurity, a landscape that could harden when danger rose. Yet this is precisely why the system is haunting. It is both ordinary and extraordinary. Ordinary because it is about cattle crops, paths, and households. Extraordinary because the solutions were scaled up until the land itself became the record. Finally comes the biggest unanswered question, the one that makes the circles feel like a lost civilization rather than an archaeological data set. Why did maintenance stop if the system flourished into the early 19th century and then all but disappeared? As historians summarize, the decline likely involved a knot of forces: conflict cycles, shifting trade, political reorganization, displacement, changing labor demands, but the stones do not narrate a single cinematic collapse. Instead, they leave a colder mystery, a civilization-scale design that ended quietly, walls sinking into grass corridors, breaking terraces, silting, until modern people could stand inside a circle and see almost nothing while satellites, aircraft, and aerial surveys revealed the truth. The Bakoni circles were never the story by themselves. They were the visible punctuation marks of a much longer sentence written across southern Africa's mountains.